And one more request is that, when you are not speaking, if you can just keep your microphone on mute. And if you wish to ask a question, you will be given time in the question answer session. Then you can raise your hand through this icon, and you can ask your questions. So that's it from my side. I hope it was clear to everybody. So Shishiji, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Rishaji. So good afternoon, namaskar, assalamu alaikum. Distinguished speakers, esteemed affiliates of Homenet South Asia, and respected participants joining us from across South Asia and beyond. I'm Srishti Joshi Malla, the Regional Coordinator of Homenet South Asia and the moderator for today's webinar. It is my honor on behalf of Homenet South Asia to warmly welcome you to today's webinar, Bridging Voices, Home-Based Worker Realities and Policy Pathways to End Violence. We are privileged to convene this important gathering during this 16 days of activism, where grassroots experiences and policy leadership come together on one shared platform. We are deeply honored to have with us eminent leaders committed to justice and transformation. Honorable Ms. Shireen Praveen Haq, Chair of the Women's Affairs Reform Commission, Bangladesh. Honorable Ms. Umaylala Azhar, Chair of the National Commission on the Status of Women, Pakistan. Ms. Bandana Rana, Member of the UN CEDAW Committee. Ms. Chandni Joshi, Enforcer. I request you to kindly mute yourselves, and Sheetalben, if you can help me doing that. Ms. Chandni Joshi, Enforcer of Homenet South Asia. Our two advisory board members, our champions on the ground, Ms. Farida Khanam, National Coordinator of LIE Bangladesh, and Ms. Viakulab Mary, Executive Director of SAVE India. And most importantly, we are joined by the powerhouses of truth, our home-based worker sisters, Ms. Shanti Maharjan from Nepal and Ms. Shagufta from Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us today. Your voices are the reason we are here. Your lived realities must shape our policies, our commitments, and our collective resolve. Your willingness to share your lived experiences adds depth, urgency, and authenticity to this dialogue. Homenet South Asia today represents 1.2 million home-based workers organized through 62 affiliates in 8 South Asian countries. This makes our network the largest collective voice of home-based workers in the region. Women whose labor sustains supply chains, drives local economies, and holds together households and communities. Yet, despite their contributions, they remain among the most invisible, unprotected, and undervalued workers in the labor ecosystem. And the violence they face, whether at home, at work, or in the community, has for far too long remained unaddressed in mainstream labor and gender policies. Today, through open dialogue and multilingual interpretation in Bangla, Hindi, Nepali, and Urdu, we aim to ensure that every voice is heard and every perspective valued. We hope this exchange will contribute to stronger policy pathways and coordinated regional efforts to end all forms of violence faced by home-based workers. Thank you for joining us and for your continued engagement in advancing justice, safety, and dignity for millions of women across South Asia. With that, I extend a warm welcome to each one of you and look forward to a meaningful and constructive discussion. Thank you. I now, being the moderator, request Homenet South Asia's enforcer, Ms. Chandni Joshi, to chair this webinar. If you could spotlight Sheetalben. With 60 years of working experience, Ms. Chandni Joshi's name is synonymous with gender, rights, and macro policies in Nepal and other South Asian countries. From a lecturer at Padma Kanya College to Joint Secretary as well as Chief of Women Development Division in the Government of Nepal to the Regional Director of UNIFEM, United Nations Development Fund for Women, for South Asia, Ms. Joshi's professional journey has given her innumerous challenges at national, regional, and global level, which have enhanced her capabilities and evolved her into a powerful into a powerhouse of knowledge and diverse issues. Ms. Joshi is the enforcer of HomeNet South Asia. She continues to guide HomeNet South Asia and advocate for marginalized and excluded women in South Asia. She has been awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award in multiple spheres by diverse institutions, including one from the President of Nepal. At present, Ms. Joshi is also engaged as chair of Women Friendly Disaster Management Group, trustee of University of Nepal, and patron of Forum of Former International Professional of Multilateral Organizations, FIPMO. I would like to now kindly request Madam Chair to set the context for today's webinar, Bridging Voices, Home-Based Worker Realities and Policy Pathways to End Violence. Over to you.
Thank you, Srishti. Well, looking at the audience itself, I think HomeNet South Asia has already set the context. We have policy planners, people, who have fought from the ground for women's rights now in such positions. That itself tells us the context of Asia. Now I'll start. Distinguished speakers, respected colleagues, and partners across South Asia and beyond. A very good afternoon, namaskar, and assalamu alaikum. It is indeed my pleasure to set the context for today's regional dialogue. And I love the title, Bridging Voices, Home-Based Workers' Realities and Policy Pathways to End Violence. I'll do so by wearing two hats. One, of course, is the enforcer of HomeNet South Asia that I'm representing. And as someone who has spent 60 years listening to the realities, the aspirations and the struggles of excluded and marginalized women across our region, including home-based workers. I'm really nostalgic today, as the three distinguished speakers today have all been my partners in starting the whole campaign on violence against women, right from 1998. Honorable Shireen Haq, who started Nari Pakko. We were together marching the 10th of December 1998 together. Honorable Ume Laila ji from Oral Foundation, and Bandana Rana ji from Sati. So we were all together. Since I was counting, it's almost 27 years that we have been fighting for the rights of women and saying that we need a life without violence, that women should be able to live. Therefore, this webinar is so special for me today. I strongly believe in knowledge-based advocacy. We can think, we can talk, but it's very important to be rooted, at the grassroots level itself. So research conducted by HomeNet South Asia and our national partners consistently shows that violence is one of the strongest determinants of whether a woman can work, earn, or participate in public life. For home-based workers, the home is the workplace, and yet it's also the site where they face intimate partner violence that limits mobility, bargaining power, and control over income. And economic violence, including confiscation of earnings or denial of access to financial tools. Well, I'm sure we'll be hearing all these stories later. And the psychological violence, especially for women, negotiating work in a patriarchal setting is so perpetuated, all the while we see. And the community level violence, harassment, and stigma towards women who work from home and are not even recognized. Violence embedded in supply chains, through exploitative rates, delayed payments, and unsafe work demands. And we hear of so many sexual, favors they are asked only because of their own work. And the digital violence as more home-based workers are connected online without adequate safeguards. Homenet South Asia's study across Nepal, Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan had repeatedly, and I repeat repeatedly, shown that violence is both a cause and consequence of economic disempowerment. If a woman's right to safety is compromised, her right to work is automatically compromised. Our meeting today places the highest value on ground experiences that we are going to hear from two of our champions and two home-based workers. The stories we are about to hear from Shagufta in Pakistan and Shanti in Nepal, from Mary Ji in India and from Farida in Bangladesh are not isolated accounts. They mirror thousands of testimonies documented by Homenet South Asia and affiliates. Women who stitch garments late into the night but are denied autonomy even over their own income that they earn. Women who face backlash simply for stepping out to negotiate rates or meet buyers. Their dignity is doubted. Women who endure psychological violence for using mobile banking or digital platforms. Women who, despite facing violence, continue to carry the weight of both unpaid care and paid production. Their courage in speaking today is, in itself, an act of resistance. Across South Asia, violence against women is recognized as a human rights and public health issue. But violence against home-based workers in their dual role as workers and as women remains poorly understood and rarely addressed. And that's a pity. And we have been working on this for more than 27 years now. The labor laws, forget them. Social protection frameworks, rarely address home-based workers' issues. Urban housing and infrastructure policies, digital inclusion programs, supply chain responsibility mechanisms, as their contribution is not assessed in the national economy. Neither the labor force survey talks about it or the census exercises. Most critically, the home as workplace has yet to be fully acknowledged in labor policy, despite the adoption of ILO Convention 177 on homework, which HNSA continues to champion across the region. And we are still waiting for the ratification, at least in one country at least. Ending violence requires more than awareness. It requires structural change, backed by legal recognition, access to justice, safe reporting mechanisms, and recognition of workers' organizations, women's agencies, and responsive supply chains and multi-sectoral partnerships. That is what today's dialogue aims to push forward. South Asia is in a pivotal moment. If you really look around in South Asia, what's really happening at social front, at political front, the kind of mini revolutions it's facing. But governments are revising labor codes, adopting the digital payment ecosystems, expanding social protection, and investing in women's economic empowerment. This creates a historical opportunity for all of us. HNSA's policy reviews show that when governments, commissions, and worker organizations collaborate, progress is not only possible, but rapid and sustainable. That also we'll hear today. Our collective challenge is to ensure that ending violence against home-based workers is embedded into these national and regional policy reforms, not as an afterthought, but as a core priority. This is why today's panel is so important. We have with us Honorable Ms. Shireen Parveen Haq, a leading reformer in Bangladesh, whom I have had the proud privilege of working. I don't know how long we have been together, Shini, from the 80s onwards. And of course, with Honorable Ume Laila ji, a strong advocate for women's rights in Pakistan. We have worked since the 90s together. And Ms. Vandana Rana, who is Nepal's pride, globally recognized for her work on CEDAW. And with her also, I have been working with her since the CEDAW, since the Saathi days. Then, of course, the think tank of UNIFEM. And in many, many, biannual meetings, we have been together. So the three of them, their insights will help us connect the ground realities with the policy pathways we urgently need. Of course, the webinar today strives to bring visibility to the specific forms of violence faced by home-based workers, strengthen regional understanding of the home as a workplace, elevate worker voices to inform policy making, identify actionable policy steps grounded in evidence and experiences, and build cross-border momentum for recognition, protection, and prevention. Our goal is not merely discussion, it is a collective direction. Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge the courage of every home-based worker joining us today. Your truth will guide our advocacy, has been guiding our advocacy, our research, and our regional solidarity. Let this webinar serve as a reminder that ending violence is fundamental in enabling work, dignity, and empowerment. And that policies built with workers' voices at the center are the ones that endure and are sustainable. With that, I thank you all for being here and invite us to begin this conversation with openness, respect, and a shared commitment to meaningful change that we want to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I'd like to begin this webinar by showing an animated video made by HNSA some years ago on violence faced by home-based workers. The data on home-based workers may be slightly outdated, but the issues remain the same. So I request the HNSA team to kindly show the video with the sound on.
There are over 61 million home-based workers in South Asia, a majority of who are women working from in and around their homes. They are often part of supply chains across the globe, but they work in isolation and have little bargaining power, making them vulnerable to violence. In the world of home-based work, violence is an unspoken but ever-present reality. Women home-based workers face many types of violence: physical, psychological, sexual, and economic. These have a deep impact on all aspects of their lives. HomeNet South Asia, a network of home-based worker organizations representing 900,000 worker voices, has noted that violence is closely linked with the productivity of women home-based workers and impedes their economic empowerment. For women home-based workers, their homes are also their workplace. When they suffer domestic violence, their physical injuries or their fragile psychological state affects their well-being, hampering their productivity. They are then trapped in an unbreakable circle of violence when workplace violence too enters their homes. Global and domestic supply chains lack transparency. When large corporations refuse to acknowledge the presence of home-based workers in their supply chains, it ensures their powerlessness in the face of violence. The power, however, is concentrated in the hands of contractors and middlemen who bring in work, and are often verbally and physically violent when orders are not delivered on time or when not up to the mark. Sexual violence and harassment are now common in supply chains, but without adequate labor protections, they go unreported and unaddressed. Along with employers, governments too have failed to safeguard the rights of home-based workers, as laws are not effectively implemented to prevent workplace violence and harassment. In South Asia, they are also unprotected by national labor laws, and their earnings remain well below minimum wage standards. This is economic violence, and it cuts off their access to a dignified life. The grip of violence has only tightened around the lives of home-based workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. Those who are victims of domestic violence have been trapped at home with perpetrators, with little access to helplines, state resources, or even worker representative organizations. Economic shutdowns have meant that home-based workers have been forced to take up work for even more meager earnings, and many have reported demands for sexual favors in exchange for work. However, the shadows cast by the silent pandemic of violence can be defeated. In this, ILO's Violence and Harassment Convention 190 offers a ray of hope. C190 is an enlightened instrument that broadens the definition of the workplace to include the homes of workers and also public spaces and transport. Further, it also recognizes that domestic violence can also be workplace violence. This makes C190 inclusive of home-based workers and addresses their unique challenges when tackling violence and harassment at the workplace. However, only Uruguay, Fiji, and Namibia have ratified the instrument since it was passed in 2019. Countries across South Asia are yet to ratify the convention. Faced with increasing violence, home-based workers will have to come together to unionize and amplify their voice to push for ratification in their countries. When laws addressing the issue of violence and harassment at the workplace are being created or strengthened, home-based worker organizations will have to make clear asks that cater to their needs. Regionally, the HNSA network demands that country governments ratify C190. Governments too have a responsibility to commit to the process of ratification and to step up policy efforts and programs that protect women home-based workers. Together, we can build a violence-free world.
Thank you. Here, a little correction in the video is that now we have Bangladesh, who has already ratified C190. So a huge congratulations to Bangladesh on this. It is indeed an urgent call to confront the silent, invisible, and normalized violence that women home-based workers face every day. We will now listen to our home-based workers from Nepal and Pakistan. First, I'd like to introduce Ms. Shanti Maharjan. Shanti ji is a home-based worker leader from Chandragiri, Nepal. She started working for home-based workers' rights since 2012 after receiving training in organizing by Seva, and has organized more than 500 home-based workers in her area. She's an activist and she advocates for the rights of marginalized women in her community. My question to you, Shanti ji, is that you have organized more than 500 home-based workers in your area, and you have also taken and given trainings on curbing violence against women home-based workers. What has been your experience on the ground? What type of violence do you and other home-based workers in your communities mostly face? Over to you, Shanti ji. Unmute गरिदिनु होला.
नमस्कार, म शान्ति महर्जन, चन्द्रगिरी नगरपालिका नेपालबाट। होम बेस्ड वर्कर गृह श्रमिकमा काम गरेको मैले 12 वर्ष भयो। मैले काम गर्दाखेरि मेरो गृह श्रमिक दिदीबहिनीहरूलाई चाहिँ धेरै समस्याहरू आएको छ। त्यसमा पनि मैले यो जुन हामीले काम गर्छौँ नि, काम गर्दाखेरि गृह श्रमिक महिला दिदीबहिनीहरूमा के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि अब घरको पनि सबै काम भ्याएर हामीले चाहिँ 1-2 पैसा इन्कम होस् भनेर काम गर्छौँ। गर्दाखेरि त्यो काम गरेको पैसा लिनलाई पनि बिचुलीसँग धेरै नै बिन्ती गर्नुपर्ने, रिक्वेस्ट गर्नुपर्ने र त्यो लिने ठाउँमा जाँदा पनि अब गाडीमै बसेर जानुपर्ने हुन्छ। गाडीमा बसेर जाँदा पनि आज आउने पैसालाई पनि भोलि आउनुहोस्, पर्सि आउनुहोस् गर्दा गर्दा उहाँहरूले 1 हप्ता झुलाइदिन्छ। त्यो गर्दाखेरि एउटा होम बेस्ड वर्करलाई घरको कामदेखि लिएर सबै काम भ्याउनु पर्ने, घर व्यवहार बच्चाहरूदेखि बिहानदेखि बेलुकासम्म खटिराख्ने, त्यसमा त मूल्य नै हुँदैन। तैपनि अब त्यो काम गर्ने ठाउँमा जाँदाखेरि उसले त्यस्तो गर्दाखेरि एउटा पारिवारिक हिंसा पनि थपिन्छ। किन भन्दाखेरि एक दिनमा पैसा लिन जानलाई पनि सधैँ जानुपर्छ तिमी भनेर भनिरहेको हुन्छ घर परिवारले, श्रीमानले। त्यसमा छुट्टै हिंसा हुन्छ भने त्यहाँ उता साउजीले पनि अब भोलि आऊ पर्सि आऊ भनिरहेको हुन्छ, बिचौलीले फेरि त्यो बिचमा खाइदिएको हुन्छ उनीहरूको जुन आउने पैसा पनि, त्यसमा पनि फेरि हिंसै थप्यो। अनि त्यो हिंसाले गर्दाखेरि घर परिवारको शारीरिक हिंसा, मानसिक हिंसा, सामाजिक यौनिक सबै थपिरहेको हुन्छ उसलाई चाहिँ। किन भन्दा ऊ एउटा कारणले गर्दाखेरि उसको घरै बिग्रिसकेको हुन्छ। त्यसमा पनि हामीले अब 500जनालाई हामीले टाइममा ट्रेनिङ दिएर सिलाइ बुनाइदेखि लिएर हरेक कुरामा हामीले घरमै बसेर काम गर्नेहरू तालिम दिन्छौँ। दिँदाखेरि एउटा मलाई आफूलाई परेको घटना चाहिँ मैले 1 महिना फ्रीमा ट्रेनिङ दिएको थिएँ स्वेटरको। त्यो दिँदाखेरि के भयो भन्दाखेरि त्यो दिदीबहिनीहरूको हामीले दुई महिनाको पैसा लिएर त्यो कम्पनीमा पैसा लिन जाँदाखेरि 2 महिनापछि भोलि आउनुहोस् पर्सि आउनुहोस् भन्नुभयो। अब तिनीहरूलाई थाहा थिएन कि त्यहाँ त्यस्तो भन्यो भनेर। मैले भनेको कुरा अब विश्वास गर्नु भएन उहाँहरूले, किन भन्दाखेरि मैले त पैसा ल्याएर चला जस्तो भयो। म आफै हिंसामा परेँ। मैले चाहिँ दिदीबहिनीहरूको लागि चाहिँ गृह श्रमिक दिदीबहिनीहरूको लागि काम गरेर उहाँहरूलाई सहज होस्, आर्थिक पाटो सहज होस् भनेर ल्याइदिएँ, काम गर्न लगाइदिएँ। तर त्यो साउले काम पैसा नदिएपछि अब त्यो जुन बुन्ने दिदीबहिनी हुनुहुन्छ नि, गृह श्रमिक दिदीबहिनीहरूले बिचमा के गर्नुभयो भन्दाखेरि बाटोमै कुरेर मलाई चाहिँ खै हामीले स्वेटर बुनेको पैसा दिने होइन भनेर भन्नुभयो नि। आउँदैछ अब अर्को महिना दिन्छु भन्नुभएको छ भने ल्याएर आफूले चलायो, आफू घुमेर खायो होला भन्नुभयो। मलाई त्यत्तिकै तनाव भयो, बाटोमा सबैको अगाडि भन्नुभयो क्या। त्यसमा हिंसा नै थप्यो। किन भन्दाखेरि मेरो मानसिक टर्चर भए जस्तो भयो नि त, मलाई दिमागमै कस्तो बेइज्जत हुने कुरा गरे जस्तो भयो। अनि मैले होइन आउँदैछ 1 महिना पर्खनु भन्नुभएको छ भनेर भनेको त ऊ त त्यत्तिकै रिसार कराउनु भयो। अहिलेसम्म पनि बोलचाल छैन। यस्तो हिंसाहरू भनेको धेरै नै आइरहेको हुन्छ दिदीबहिनीमा। अनि अर्को यो हिंसा गर्दाखेरि हामी आफूले नचाहेको काममा पनि फसिने रहेछ कि। जस्तै अब काम गर्न जाँदाखेरि त्यहाँ साउले अब हेराइले हेर्ने नजरै फरक हुन्छ। उसलाई पैसा दिनु पर्ला कि पैसा आधी मात्र दिउँ कि भन्ने सोचिरहेको हुन्छ। अनि हामीले पैसा माग्दाखेरि पनि अहिले त सामाजिक सञ्जालमा के हुन्छ भने तिम्रो त म बेइज्जत गरिदिन्छु, यस्तो गरिदिन्छु, नभएको कुरा राखिदिन्छु, पोस्ट गरिदिन्छु पनि भनिरहेको हुन्छ। त्यो भन्दाखेरि त्यसमा पनि अलिकति हिंसा नै बढी देखिन्छ। किन भन्दा उसको त्यो भनेपछि उसले आफूले मेहनत गरेको जुन आउनुपर्ने पैसा हुन्छ नि, आफूले काम गरेको त्यो पनि ल्याऊ भन्न सकिँदैन। अब उसले त नभएको कुरा पोस्ट गरिदिन्छु भनेपछि ऊ त डराउँछ। डराएपछि त उसले धेरै समस्याहरू खप्नुपर्ने हुन्छ त्यहाँ। त्यही भएर उसलाई चाहिँ त्यसमा पनि एकदमै समस्या देख्छु म। अनि हामीले काम गर्दै जाँदाखेरि चाहिँ परिवारबाटै हिंसा हुन्छ। बिहान उठेर बिहान सबै काम भ्याएर हामी आफ्नो दिदीबहिनीहरूले ल अब आफ्नो लागि चाहिँ केही गर्नुपर्छ भनेर बस्छौँ। तर त्यो गर्दाखेरि के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि श्रीमानले बेलुका आएर चाहिँ तिमीले के काम गर्यो दिनभरिमा, तिमी यतिको लागि 2-4 पैसाको लागि यसरी हिँड्छौ, ल त्यो पैसा मै दिन्छु, कहीँ जानु पर्दैन भनेर तिनीहरूलाई घरबाटै निकाल्दैन क्या। पारिवारिक समस्या भनेको त्यो गर्दाखेरि धर्म हाम्रो जुन सामाजिक धर्म संस्कृति त्यो अनि बेलुका भएपछि यौन हिंसा, आर्थिक पाटोदेखि लिएर हामी सबै वञ्चित हुँदै गइरहेको हामीले देख्छौँ। त्यस्तो हुँदाखेरि जुन काम गर्न खोज्यो नि त्यो हामीले कहिले गर्नै पाउँदैन गृह श्रमिक दिदीबहिनीहरूले। अब यसको लागि हामीले सरोकारवालासँग पनि सल्लाह गरेर अब यस्तोको लागि हामीलाई बजेट छुट्याउनु पर्यो। अलिकति हामी सधैँ अरूसँग कति माग गरौँ भनेर भन्दाखेरि सरोकारवालाले पनि आज आउनुहोस्, भोलि आउनुहोस्, तपाईँहरूको काम गरिदिन्छु। तर हाम्रो नामै गृह श्रमिक छौँ हामी, त्यहाँ चाहिँ गिरिनी भनेर राखिदिनुहुन्छ। नामै मिल्दैन, तपाईँहरूको बजेट त आछ मिल्दैन भने त्यहाँ पनि हामीले मागेको अधिकार चाहिँ हामी आफैले लिन सकिरहेको हुन्छ। त्यो बजेट अरूले चलाइदिँदा त्यसमा झनै पीडा हुन्छ हामी लिडरहरूलाई चाहिँ। किन भन्दा कति दुःख गरेर हामीले बजेट राख्छौँ, राखेर पनि त्यो बजेट हाम्रो दिदीबहिनीहरूले गृह श्रमिक दिदीबहिनीहरूले चलाउनै पाउँदैन। त्यसमा झनै दुःख लाग्छ लिडर भएर पनि। अनि अर्को कुरा, अब म त सिङ्गल वुमेन भएको भएर एकल महिला पनि परेँ। मैले चाहिँ धेरै यस्तो हिंसाहरू चाहिँ खेपेको छु कि। जस्तै आफ्नै घर परिवारबाट भयो, अनि त्यसमा आएर पनि अब हरेक कुरामा चाहिँ उनीहरूले चाहिँ युज एन्ड थ्रो गर्न लागिरहेको हुन्छ कि। अब तिमीले भनेको गरिदिन्छु, तर तिमी चाहिँ आज एक दिन चाहिँ मसँग घुम्न जाउँ, नभए टाइम मिलाऊ भनिरहेको हुन्छ कि त्यस्तो कुरा पनि आइरहेको हुन्छ। अब तिनीहरूसँग हामीले त्यो घुम्नको लागि तिनीहरूसँग बस्नको लागि त हामीले काम गरेको होइन नि। हामीले भन्छौँ कि खुल्न आम ल हामीलाई चाहिँ यस्तो हिंसा चाहिँ नहोस् भन्ने चाहन्छौँ। तर हुँदा हुँदा सामाजिक क्षेत्रमा काम गर्दाखेरि के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि जसले काम गरिरहेको हुन्छ लिडर भएर उसलाई झनै हिंसा परिरहेको हुन्छ। अनि त्यो हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ अब सहनै सकिँदैन के, कहिलेकाहीँ चाहिँ हिंसाले पनि अति नागेपछि हामीले पनि कानुनी रूपमा पनि जानुपर्ने हुन्छ। त्यसमा जाँदा पनि अब त्यहाँ पनि जसको पावर छ, जसको शक्ति छ उसकै भक्ति भने जस्तो हुन्छ। त्यही भएर हिंसाको कारणले धेरै नै हामीलाई गाह्रो हुन्छ। अनि अर्को कुरा, अब हामीले काम गर्ने ठाउँमा चाहिँ यो गृह श्रमिक दिदीबहिनीहरूले काम गर्दै जाँदाखेरि चाहिँ उनीहरूलाई के गर्छ भन्दाखेरि धेरै जस्तो पुरुषहरूले चाहिँ दृष्टिले हेर्ने गर्छ तिनीहरूलाई। अब हेर्दाखेरि नै अब मान्छेको नजरमै थाहा हुन्छ कि हामीले त अब धेरै भोगिसकेको भएर मान्छेको नजर नै अब उसलाई छुन पाए हुन्छ, उसको शरीरमा छुन पाए हुन्छ, संवेदनशील अङ्गहरूमा यस्तो गर्नु पाए हुन्छ, उसको मनमै भइरहेको हुन्छ। त्यो हुँदाखेरि हामी त्यो पुरुषहरूबाट पनि बच्नलाई गाह्रै छ महिलाहरूलाई चाहिँ, महिला दिदीबहिनीहरूलाई। त्यही भएर हामीले चाहिँ हामी भन्छौँ गृह श्रमिक दिदीबहिनीहरू हिंसामा पर्यो। त्यो सबै हिंसा चाहिँ हामी आफैलाई पनि परिरहेको हुन्छ। शारीरिक हिंसा, मानसिक हिंसा, सामाजिक, यौनिक अनि आर्थिक पाटोदेखि लिएर हामी सबैलाई समेटेर लाँदाखेरि चाहिँ एउटा हिंसा भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ एउटै मात्र होइन कि त्यो एकजनालाई नै धेरै हिंसा भइरहेको हुन्छ। काम गर्ने ठाउँबाट अब घरमा एक्लै भइरहेको हुन्छ। त्यो एक्लै काम गर्दा पनि कोही आएर घचघचाउन आउँछ कि केही हुन्छ कि भन्ने डर हुन्छ। अब 2-4जना साथीहरू बसेर काम गरौँ भनेर गर्छौँ, फेरि त्यसको बुढोले घरमा घर त्योसँग किन बस्न गएको, त्यहाँ बसेर किन काम गरेको, एक्लै बस भन्ने त्यो पनि हिंसा भयो। त्यस्तो गर्दाखेरि हामी गृह श्रमिकले चाहिँ कहिले हो हिंसाबाट बच्ने भन्ने कुरा आउँछ। अहिले हामी जुन हिंसाको कुरा गरिरहेछौँ त्यसमा चाहिँ यो देशभरिकै हिंसा भनेको हामीले गृह श्रमिकमा टाइममा तालिम लिँदाखेरि पनि हामीले भनिरहेको हुन्छ हिंसा हिंसा भनेर। तर त्यो जुन तालिम लिँदा पनि हिंसा त हिंसा नै हो। हिंसाले के कतिसम्म हामीलाई घाटा पर्छ भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ धेरैलाई थाहा भएकै कुरा हो। अब मैले लकडाउनमा हामीले यति धेरै काम गर्दाखेरि घरबाट बाहिर जान पनि हामीलाई मुस्किल थियो त्यो बेला। तर पनि हामीले च्यालेन्ज लिएर काम गरेँ। महिला दिदीबहिनीहरूलाई, अब हाम्रो दिदीबहिनीहरू जुन खाना बनाउन आउने दिदीबहिनीहरूलाई पनि तिमीहरू गयो भने खुट्टा काटिदिन्छु, हात भाँचिदिन्छु, यस्तो गरिदिन्छु भनेर पारिवारिक हिंसा। तर पनि आँटै गरेर बाहिर निस्किँदाखेरि चाहिँ एकजना निस्किएपछि अर्कोजना अर्को भनेर त्यो च्यालेन्जलाई चाहिँ हामीले लिन सक्यौँ भने चाहिँ सहज हुने रहेछ भन्ने चाहिँ बुझ्यो। अनि त्यसमा चाहिँ अब मेरो जुन 12 वर्षको काम गरेको अनुभवमा चाहिँ मैले गरेको सबभन्दा एउटा राम्रो लागेको कुरा भनेको एउटा गृह श्रमिक महिला दिदीबहिनी होस् या आमाहरूलाई चाहिँ हामीले सबभन्दा ठुलो त सङ्गठित गरेर लानुपर्ने रहेछ। सङ्गठित गर्दाखेरि त्यो हिंसालाई पनि अब त्यो बिस्तारै हटाउँदै लान सकिने रहेछ। अब त्यो हामीले काम गर्ने ठाउँमा आउनुहुन्छ, उहाँहरूले सबै कुरा राख्नुहुन्छ। आज मेरो घर परिवारबाट यस्तो भन्नुभयो, बुढोले यस्तो भन्नुभयो, सासूले भन्ने कुरा हुन्छ। त्यसपछि अहिलेको कुरा लाई लिएर हामीले चाहिँ त्यो के अरे सबै कुरा सुन्दाखेरि त्यो मानसिक जुन हिंसाको बोझ हुन्छ नि त्यो सबै बिस्तारै हट्ने रहेछ। त्यही भएर त्यो च्यालेन्ज भनेको धेरै कुरा आउँछ, जुन कुरामा चाहिँ हाम्रो सामाजिक सञ्जालदेखि लिएर यो गृह श्रमिकहरूको जुन आर्थिक पाटोदेखि लिएर मानसिक तनाव, शारीरिक हिंसादेखि लिएर हरेक ठाउँमा जहाँ जाँदा पनि हामीलाई हिंसै भइरहेको हुन्छ। कसरी शरीरमा टच गरौँ, काम गर्दा बिचोलीले खाइदिने, ज्यालाहरू नदिने, अनि त्यसपछि आएर काम ल्याउने मान्छेले नै आधीभन्दा बढी खाइदिने गर्दाखेरि सबै गृह श्रमिक दिदीहरू हिंसामै परिरहेको हुन्छ। त्यही कारणले अब यो हिंसालाई चाहिँ अलिकति हामीले धेरै नै गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। सकेको हो त्यो?
Thank you, Shantiji. So we heard from the ground, from Nepal. Now we move to Pakistan, and I request Miss Shagufta. Please spotlight her for me. Ms. Shagufta is a home-based worker from Lahore, Pakistan, who joined HomeNet Pakistan in 2015-2016. Through the network, she received training on recycling and creating eco-friendly products. A highly skilled artisan, she now makes children's bed sheets and sells them online, earning her own income and building her independence. Her journey, however, has not been without hardship. She survived partner violence and with great courage chose to end the abusive marriage and rebuild her life on her own terms. She also endured the heartbreaking loss of her young daughter, an experience that continues to carry emotional and psychological weight. Yet, despite the tragedies and challenges, Ms. Shagufta stands strong, a reminder of the resilience of home-based workers across South Asia. Assalamu alaikum, Shagufta Appa. You have been through so much.
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
मैं इंग्लिश में पोज करूंगी क्वेश्चन, आपको उसमें आएगा इंटरप्रिटेशन में, ठीक है? So Shagufta Appa, you have been through so much in life. We salute you for being a survivor and for showing your resilience time and again. Appa, could you share with us the injustices you had to face in life? And if time permits, can you shed some light on the kinds of violence that home-based workers in your area face?
मैंने जो लाइफ गुजारी है उसमें यूजुअली तो यही होता था कि अचानक घर में लड़ाई शुरू हो जाती थी। नमक कम है, मिर्च तेज है, ये डाइनिंग टेबल पे क्यों खाना लगा है, सेंटर टेबल पे क्यों नहीं लगा। तो मतलब लड़ने के लिए घर में किसी चीज के लिए उनको किसी चीज की जरूरत नहीं होती थी। होता था कि जी किस कोई बहाना, कुछ लोग होते हैं वो बहाना ढूंढ लेते थे और मैं हैरान परेशान देखती रह जाती थी कि ये तो लड़ने वाली मार कुटाई वाली कोई बात ही नहीं थी। और फिजिकली टॉर्चर इस तरह का होता था कि कोई किसी जानवर पे भी नहीं करता होगा। इस कदर टॉर्चर। मेरी फैमिली में कोई फंक्शन आना तो पहले से ही पता होता था फंक्शन आ रहा है, तो 8-10 दिन पहले बेस बननी शुरू हो जाती थी। बात बात पे लड़ाई, बात बात पे मार कुटाई, गाली गलूच, और इस तरह ही करते करते। लेकिन चूंकि हम लोगों का कल्चर इस तरह से था, एक दफा मेरे अब्बू कहते हैं कि किस बात पे तुम लोगों की लड़ाई होती है, क्यों मारते हैं?" तो मैंने हंस के कहा, मैंने कहा अब्बू उनको लड़ने के लिए किसी बहाने की जरूरत नहीं होती। मेरे अब्बू के कहने का मतलब ये था कि तुम वो बात ना किया करो। तो मैंने उनसे कहा कि उनको लड़ने के लिए किसी बात की जरूरत नहीं होती, वो बात खुद पैदा कर लेते हैं। बहरहाल मेरे बच्चे इसी तरह बड़े होते गए। और मैं अपनी जो मैरिड लाइफ से पहले वो सोशल लड़की जो कहती होती थी कि ऐसे शख्स को 2 घंटे भी बर्दाश्त नहीं करना चाहिए, मैंने उस शख्स के साथ 30 साल गुजार दिए अपने बच्चों की खातिर। यानी वो शादी से पहले जो मेरी सोच थी वो ऐसी बंध गई, ऐसी पैक हो गई मेरे अपने ही अंदर। और मैंने उस इंसान के साथ 30 साल गुजार दिए बच्चों की खातिर। खास तौर पे मैं ये सोचती थी कि मैं डाइवोर्स ले लेती हूँ तो मेरी बेटी के साथ कोई शादी नहीं करेगा।
ट्रांसलेशन के लिए रुकना।
नेटले पुरुगुला
ट्रांसलेशन के लिए रुके थे।
बोलूं?
नहीं, wait, बोलना।
तो मैंने कहा कि मेरी बेटी के साथ कोई शादी नहीं करेगा। फिर एक दफा ऐसे हुआ कि रैंडमली होमनेट ने एक वो करवाया, ट्रेनिंग करवाई। तो उसमें रिसाइकलिंग पे थी, मुख्तलिफ बिजनेस पे भी थी। उससे मुझे बहुत सारे आइडियाज मिले। और फिर आइडियाज मिलने के बाद मैंने उसको फिर एक दफा फिर मैंने खुद को स्ट्रॉन्ग किया कि नहीं, मैंने ना अपना कुछ करना है। क्योंकि हमें अपनी जरूरियात को पूरा करने के लिए जैसे भीख मांगते हैं ना, इस तरह उनको बार बार कहना पड़ता था इस चीज के लिए चाहिए, इस चीज के लिए चाहिए। फिर उसके बाद मैंने खुद कुछ करना शुरू किया। तो वो इस तरह करते थे कि उन्हें पता चल जाता था कि ये कोई काम हो रहा है, इनको कोई अर्निंग हो रही है, तो वो जान जान के उसको उन्होंने हमें इस तरह से इंटरप्ट करना कि मेरा वो काम खराब हो जाए या मेरी अर्निंग ना हो। फिर उसके बाद लेकिन मैंने ना इसको जारी रखा, क्योंकि मैं एक दफा से फिर नए सिरे से मेरे अंदर की वो पुरानी जो थी बोल्ड और स्ट्रॉन्ग खतून वो फिर जिंदा हुई। फिर मैंने फिर उस पे काम करना शुरू किया। फिर होमनेट ने संडे मार्केट्स लगवानी शुरू की। फिर मैंने वहां पे संडे मार्केट में जाना शुरू किया, मैं संडे को जाती थी। तो उसके लिए मैं वहाँ उस वक्त मैं कोई फिजिकली नहीं कोई चीज तैयार करती थी, मैं वहाँ पे खाने पीने का सामान लगाती थी। तो उसके लिए मुझे घर से जो घर का इस्तेमाल का सिलेंडर है वो लेके जाना पड़ता था, क्योंकि वो तो एक दिन उन्हें पता चल गया कि ये जी घर का सिलेंडर लेके जाती है। इस बात पे भी उन्होंने इशू बनाया कि मेरा सिलेंडर इस्तेमाल नहीं होगा। मैंने फिर उसको उनका सिलेंडर इस्तेमाल नहीं किया, लेकिन मैंने अपनी स्ट्रगल को जारी रखा। और मेरी बेटी और मेरा बेटा इस काम में मेरा साथ देते थे। मेरी बेटी कॉलेज में थी और बेटा भी। तो इन बच्चों की वजह से मैंने फिर वो मुझे इतना वो मतलब सपोर्ट करते थे कि मैंने फिर इस काम को जारी रखा। फिर उनके इन्हीं हरकतों की वजह से मैंने फिर बाहर निकलना छोड़ दिया। तो मैंने सोचा घर में बैठ के कुछ कर लेती हूँ। फिर मैंने थोड़ा बहुत जो था वो घर में बैठ के शुरू किया अपने इर्द गिर्द के लोगों से, क्योंकि मैं इतनी दूर तक तो था नहीं, मोबाइल भी कोई इतना नहीं था। तो मैंने अपने बस छोटे लेवल पे वो काम करना, और फिर क्योंकि अपनी जरूरियात तो हमने पूरी करनी थी, मेरे बेटे ने भी होम ट्यूशंस देनी शुरू कर दी, और इस तरह हम काम
हाँ,
चलाते रहे।
अम्मी एक
फिर
मिनट।
उसके बाद मेरे पास जब मेरा बेटी का मेडिकल में एडमिशन करवाना था, तब मैंने टच मोबाइल लिया कि मैंने सर्च किया फिर कि किस डिग्री पे अगर खुदा ना खास्ता वो एंट्री टेस्ट में रह जाती है तो किस डिग्री की क्या वर्थ है पाकिस्तान के अंदर, पाकिस्तान से बाहर। आल्दो कि मेरी एजुकेशन इतनी नहीं है, लेकिन मैंने सर्च पूरा किया एंड तक कि इसकी वर्थ क्या होगी, एंड पे ये कहाँ तक डिग्री जाएगी, इसकी पाकिस्तान में पे क्या होगी, पाकिस्तान से बाहर क्या होगी। इन सारी चीज़ों को सर्च किया मैंने। फिर उसके बाद मैंने अपनी बेटी का फिजियोथेरापिस्ट में एडमिशन करवाया। और उस वक़्त फिर जब मेरे हाथ में मोबाइल आया तो मुझे बहुत सारे आइडियाज आए कि किस तरह हम बाहर की दुनिया से ताल्लुकात बना सकते हैं, बिजनेस आइडियाज ले सकते हैं, बिजनेस को आगे लेके जा सकते हैं। फिर मैंने मोबाइल का दोबारा बकायदा इस्तेमाल शुरू किया। लेकिन उसके बाद हमारे घर में जो फिजिकल और मेंटल टॉर्चर होता था, मुझ पे तो फिजिकल टॉर्चर होता था और इस कदर होता था कि मैं कितने कितने हफ्ते बिस्तर से नहीं उठ सकती थी। मेंटली तौर पे हम सब भी टॉर्चर थे, और मेरी बेटी इस कदर टॉर्चर थी कि मैं उसका काउंसलिंग करवाने जाती थी, वो भी छुप के। एक दिन उन्हें पता चल गया, उस बात पे भी हमारी लड़ाई हुई, क्योंकि वो बेहोश हो गई थी। तो डॉक्टर ने कहा कि इसको दवाइयों की जरूरत नहीं है, इसको किसी माहिर नफ्सियात के पास लेके जाए। इस बात पे हमारी इतनी लड़ाई हुई, इतना उन्होंने मुझे टॉर्चर किया तो उस वक्त पहली बार मैंने अपना, जो इन्होंने मुझे तशद्दुद किया था, उसकी तस्वीरें उतारी, उसकी वीडियो बनाई। क्योंकि ये कोई अनएजुकेटेड फैमिली नहीं है। वो शख्स खुद लॉयर है और खवातीन के हकूक पर किसी एनजीओ के साथ मिलके काम करते हैं। उसकी भाभी जो कि डॉक्टर है, कहती है मारता है, हमने तो कभी मार नहीं देखी। मैंने फिर उसको दिखाने के लिए जो इन्होंने टॉर्चर किया था वो तस्वीरें और वीडियोस बनाई, लेकिन वो मेरी बेटी ने देख ली, जिसकी वजह से वो और ज्यादा टेंशन में आ गई। फिर मेरी बेटी फिजियोथेरापिस्ट बन रही थी और वो उसका 3rd सेमेस्टर था, उसको जॉन्डस हो गया और वो अचानक बिगड़ गई। लेकिन चूंकि वो मेंटली तौर पे अपने घर के माहौल की वजह से इतनी डिस्टर्ब थी कि वो सरवाइव ही नहीं कर पाई, क्योंकि वो फेडअप थी, हम सबसे फेडअप थी, माहौल से फेडअप थी। और फिर उसकी डेथ हो गई। फिजिकली मेरी बेटी की डेथ हुई और मेंटली तौर पे मेरी भी डेथ हुई। मैं अब मेंटली तौर पे, मेरा दिमाग काम नहीं करता। मैं मेरे दिमाग में हर वक्त अपनी बेटी की, फिजिकली उस शख्स ने मुझे इतना टॉर्चर किया हुआ है कि मैं अब कोई भी काम करने के लिए काबिल नहीं रही। मैं फिजिकली काम कर ही नहीं सकती। इसलिए मैंने फिर ऑनलाइन काम शुरू किया, क्योंकि मैं थोड़ा सा काम करती हूँ तो मेरे जो जिस्म की वेन्स हैं वो इस कदर खराब हो गई हुई है कि मैं 2 नवाले भी खाना खाती हूँ तो मेरा हाथ काम करना छोड़ देता है। मेरा बेटा वो हाल धो के माशाल्लाह से एमफिल है और बहुत अच्छा माशाल्लाह से टीचर है, आइडियल टीचर है अपने स्टूडेंट्स का। लेकिन उसकी भी हमने काउंसलिंग अब शुरू करवाई है, क्योंकि 1 साल पहले मैंने डाइवोर्स ले ली थी और उसकी वजह से मेरा बेटा ज्यादा डिस्टर्ब हो गया। लेकिन माशाल्लाह से बहुत ब्रिलियंट बच्चा है। पर लास्ट टाइम जब मैंने डाइवोर्स लेने का फैसला किया तो जो वो वाला टॉर्चर था कि उस शख्स ने मैं लेटी हुई थी, मेरे दोनों हाथ मरोड़ के पीछे दबा के मेरे सीने पे चढ़ के बैठ के नीचे मेरे बाजू और मुझे दबा के मेरी गर्दन को दबाना शुरू कर दिया। इससे पहले कि मेरी डेथ हो जाती या कुछ और हो जाता, हमारे घर की बेल बजी तो उस शख्स के हाथ थोड़े से ढीले पड़े तो मैं एकदम से भागी। लेकिन मेरे मुंह से आवाज निकल ही नहीं रही थी, सिर्फ चीखें निकल रही थी। फिर उस दिन मुझे कहते हैं मैंने तुम्हें छोड़ दिया। मैंने कहा अब तुम मुझे क्या छोड़ोगे, अब मैं तुम्हें छोड़ूंगी। क्योंकि उस शख्स की मौजूदगी मुझे तहफ्फुज नहीं देती थी। उस शख्स की मौजूदगी मुझे खौफ में मुब्तला रखती थी। जितनी देर तक वो घर में रहते थे मुझे लगता था अभी कुछ हुआ, अभी कुछ हुआ, अभी कुछ हुआ। और फिर मैंने उस शख्स को डाइवोर्स उसने भेजी थी मैंने, लेकिन मैंने वापस सुलह करने से इनकार कर दिया। फिर रीमैरिज का उन्होंने पैगाम भेजा, मैंने इनकार कर दिया, क्योंकि मैं ऐसे जानवर इंसान के साथ अपना बुढ़ापा नहीं अब जाया कर सकती थी। तो मेरी एक्स ससुराल हैं, उन्होंने शर्मिंदा होने की बजाय आगे से ये कहते हैं तो इसमें ऐसी कौन सी बात है, औरतें तुम्हारे खाती ही रहती हैं। उसके बाद मैंने कहा नहीं, ये पूरे का पूरा खानदान ही ऐसा है, क्योंकि उनमें सिर्फ तलीम है, शऊर नहीं है। तो ये तो मैं कहती हूँ जब आप किसी औरत पे फिजिकली उसको टॉर्चर करते हो तो वो सिर्फ फिजिकली टॉर्चर नहीं होता, वो मेंटली टॉर्चर भी होता है और वो पूरी एक नस्ल तबाह कर देता है, जिसको मैंने अपनी आंखों से देखा। सब बच्चे तबाह हो जाते हैं, बच्चों का फ्यूचर तबाह हो जाता है, सब कुछ तबाह हो जाता है।
Thank you, Shagutapa. It takes a lot of strength to share what you just shared with us. We totally appreciate your honesty here. And thank you, Umerapa, for organizing this. You are muted. You're on
She is
mute.
not in the position to speak more. Please carry on your way.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Well, it is very difficult to hear such stories from the ground, but now we are fortunate to have Honorable Chair of the National Commission on the Status of Women, Government of Pakistan, Ms. Umaylala Azhar, with us. And without much delay, because I know she's pressed with time and we have just arranged the speaking time earlier. So Ms. Umaylala Azhar is the chairperson of the National Commission on the Status of Women, Government of Pakistan, and a renowned women's rights activist.
Thank you so much for the introduction.
Yeah, no, I'm just going, but I'm trying to change the spotlight also. Sorry. And she's a renowned women's rights activist with over 2 decades of experience in advancing gender equality, labor rights, and women's economic empowerment. She has been a pioneering leader of the home-based workers movement in Pakistan, advocating for the recognition and protection of women in the informal economy. Her efforts have significantly contributed to the development of labor and social protection policies that ensure visibility, fair wages, and decent working conditions for home-based and domestic workers. Under her leadership, NCSW has strengthened its institutional role in legal and policy reform, reviewing many major pro-women laws, such as the Protection Against Harassment of Women at the Workplace Act 2010, the Enforcement of Women's Property Rights Act 2020, and ICT Home-Based Workers Bill and ICT Medical Legal Bill. Ms. Leila has also led NCW's transformation into a data-driven and technology-facilitated organization, spearheading the National Gender Parity Report and the National Gender Data Portal. These initiatives are instrumental in tracking progress on gender equality indicators and supporting evidence-based decision-making for public policy and development planning. I know she's pressed with time, but she's also our advisory board member, and we are so happy to have her here today. So, Leila Appa, Pakistan has long been a source of inspiration for us, standing as the first country in South Asia to adopt comprehensive home-based workers policies across all 4 provinces. More recently, Pakistan reaffirmed its leadership by extending protection to home-based workers under the amended Protection Against Harassment of Women at Workplace Act in 2022. These are truly remarkable achievements. What visionary strategies and catalytic actions enabled Pakistan to reach these significant milestones? Over to you, Appa.
Well, thank you so much, Srishti. Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon, and namaste, everyone. And a special thanks to Chandni ji and Srishti for ensuring that I'm here at this webinar. So it gives me an immense satisfaction and pleasure to join this webinar here today. And from this August Forum of National Commission on the Status of Women, this is indeed an additional responsibility bestowed upon me as member of National Commission by the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And it's been like 11 months here that I am serving here as an acting chairperson of National Commission on the Status of Women, which provides me and the Commission an opportunity to explore more regarding the women economic welfare, women economic empowerment related indicators, and women labor workforce. So we have had several discussions on increasing the female labor force participation in Pakistan. So that's another regime that we are taking care of. And Srishti has also just mentioned about this. But as she has already mentioned that I have spent like more than 20 years in this movement of home-based workers in Pakistan and informal economy in Pakistan, and not in Pakistan, it's across the South Asia now. So that the journey starts, I think, 2000 onwards, where the visionary roadmap developed by Nigar Ahmed, who was the founder of HomeNet Pakistan, along with Chandni ji and Renana ji at the regional level, which provided us the roadmap in South Asian countries and obviously in Pakistan at HomeNet Pakistan also, which brought us to a point where within the labor and within the sphere of the women empowerment, the deficit that we saw in 2003 onwards, that the women are there, but they are not part of the labor. And that brought us together. I understand that Chani ji is here in 2007, where all the governments of South Asian countries in 2007 in the Delhi conference, they committed for the national policy for the home-based workers. So that was the point where I actually led this whole movement in Pakistan along with other stakeholders, and we went to the grounds. And I remember that around like 78 districts were visited to collect the policy level recommendations, and all the stakeholders were tripartite. So that national policy brought several issues from the ground of the home-based workers. Obviously, the organization was mapping the women, mapping their sectors. So we had this data at the ground level, and the policy document that was developed in 2007 was presented to the government in 2009. And from there onwards, it became the document of the government of Pakistan. So there was a larger advocacy that happened at the national level. But again, in 2011, with the devolution of powers to the provinces took up the initiative. The national policy draft was not adopted by the Labour Department, but it remained there as Magna Carta. So the Punjab and Sindh provinces, they had this, they started this process in their respective provinces with the support of HomeNet Pakistan. Obviously, we were advising, we were guiding, several other stakeholders were there. So that was the point where when we were like discussing that the women, if they are counted as laborers, so what are basically the scenarios where this specific woman is working? And as you have just heard Shugufta talking about her journey, how she was compelled into this situation because of her economic need and because of her vulnerability being in a low income group. These are all the things that were there. So from the very first day, we were very much clear that this is a labor issue, but it has a gender perspective, which instigates several kinds of like exploitations at the grassroots level. And we have been like doing several researches on how these women, they face the violence, what kind of violence they face, and what are basically the protection mechanisms there. So that was something very important. And when in 2010, Pakistan enacted this law on harassment at the workplace, which was basically a very important law. And when the enactment started, so we found out that these women cannot access to that. However, there was under 509, there was a clause where they can register their complaints and mechanisms. So that brought us to a point that HomeNet Pakistan, along with its members, we gathered recommendations because we were working on the draft legislation for home-based workers. So we gathered recommendations that how this law needs to be amended as a national law. So we brought that on the table of National Commission on the Status of Women, and in 2013, I remember onwards, letters from HomeNet Pakistan under my as a director there. So those went to all the departments, relevant stakeholders in the top policymakers. So NCSW at that time, chaired by Khawar Mumtaz Sahiba, they called us and they opened this discussion and dialogue that this law is not covering the women who are coming from the informal economy. And by that time, we had already gone through this. We had already started working on the domestic workers also. So there's another huge women workforce in Pakistan and it's also in South Asia. And I'm talking about with regard to the Convention 189 that came in 2011. So that discussion was like moving on and on and on, and several saw several like scenarios there. But our recommendations was that with every government, we were like bringing this to the point. And in 2022, it took around like 9 years. In 2022, the amendments were accepted and they were enacted in the national law, where the inclusion of the women from the informal economy became part of this Harassment Act. So it took us a long advocacy and lobbying as a women rights activist and as like I was heading HomeNet Pakistan, and also bringing in the legal fraternity with us, though those who like provided more evidences. But the evidence came from the ground, and it became a collective argument for the government. So I was just sharing that the first meeting that we had at the National Commission on the Status of Women, which invited us, HomeNet Pakistan, to present this case, was in 2013. Then the amendment we saw the amendments in 2022. So it's a long journey. So you can imagine how we have gone through this. So coming to the fact that these kinds of issues are very much there, and this is not just Shugufta. It's every home-based worker who faces this kind of domestic violence, this kind of economic violence through their contractors, through the retail market that they are visiting, within their family, within their community. So what was basically required? So as something very important that was done as a learning from the community, and that was I remember during the days of COVID when these things were starting. So the whole mechanism that started was coming from the ground, training the home-based workers leaders, union leaders, MBO leaders in combating and accessing the government laws for protection and mechanism. So the team on the ground, they were doing this. But at the policy level, I think there's still a need, since I am now representing National Commission on the Status of Women, with the vast experience on the women empowerment and specifically in the informal economy, because whenever it comes to the informal economy, people refer to my name that I'm the champion, but I'm not the champion. I have learned from my mentors, and I'm just taking their vision onwards. So there is something very important that we are doing here, and as the kind of like violence is being like we are dealing here is a technology facilitated gender-based violence. So at the Commission, we have started this soft campaign on awareness on the technology facilitated gender-based violence, because we understand that when women are working for the marketing and they are using these social media platforms, they are being harassed. So when it comes to the women in the informal economy, the low income groups, they are unaware, and they are not aware of how this social media can be harmful when they are sharing their things. So there have been like several cases which I have dealt previously personally in my organization, which brought us to the point where my team in head office, they can share what the HomeNet Pakistan did. But at the national level, we have also launched a complaint mechanism system, which is open for every woman who can reach out to the National Commission, and they can register their complaint, and redressal would be assured from here. So all these things are now part of the government agenda, the framework. Whenever there is a word on gender, women in informal economies are there in all the policy documents. Having said that, another important initiative the government of Pakistan has taken up is the economic empowerment of the women, and National Commission is also very much steadily following it up. And that's the digital and financial inclusion of the women across board. So that is something that we are working on. And with regard to the gender justice, there are several things that we are doing, as you already mentioned earlier, that the database that we have developed, and we are looking forward in 2026 to bring the National Gender Parity Report. That is something, again, going to be a milestone in Pakistan history, where the gender parity would be reported in a way where in coming years or in coming months, it would provide a roadmap to the government of Pakistan to plan their policies to bring in the frameworks that are required to increase this, to decrease this parity that exists and increase the parities. So disparities are very much there, and we are looking into each and everything. So at the time, at this point of time, we are realigning all the data of Pakistan on the gender, along with the international commitments that calls for the CEDAW, that calls for Beijing, that calls for GSP Plus and Sustainable Development Goals, and most importantly, World Economic Forum, which is very critical for Pakistan at the moment because of the fact that Pakistan is at the bottom of the table. So we are like all looking into where the data deficit is. But another important thing I would like to mention, and taking the opportunity of this platform, is that there were two important points that Pakistan have been criticized with regard to the data, and one is the data on the care economy and the gender wage gap. So just to mention here, and taking the opportunity because यहाँ से बहुत सारे लोग सुनेंगे बात और जाएगी कि we have recently the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics have recently launched the Labor Force Survey 2025, which includes the gender wage gap analysis, and National Commission is having a national policy dialogue on the 9th of December on the gender wage gap, which again opens open doors for more discussion and bringing more academic debate there, and it would provide Pakistan a space where we can gauge the gender wage gap. And secondly is the care economy. So that was again the National Commission prerogative since many years. 14 modules have been added in the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, where they have done this data collection of the care economy. So these are the two things which would provide more data on where Pakistan stands and Pakistan female labor force participation there. So these are the things that we are taking care of, and that would also provide National Commission a very level playing field in 2026 to project to the World Economic Forum against the gender global indicators where Pakistan stands. And obviously we understand that there are gaps. So we are trying to find out the gaps and mend those gaps. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to take. Otherwise, I have another meeting to join.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Azhar, for your insights. We really appreciate your presence and participation despite your busy schedule. So thank you so much. And if there are any questions for you, we'll definitely pass it on later also. So thank you so much. Thank you. HomeNet South Asia has always worked for the fundamental rights of home-based workers since the last 25 years. Economic violence is the most rampant among home-based workers, as we have heard, and violence at home equates to violence at workplace to this category of informal workers. On the ground, we have many agents of change who have implemented diverse ways of finding solutions for the estranged home-based workers. We have two such champions with us today who will shed some light on the strategies they have been carrying out in the community. We have Farida ji from Bangladesh and Mary ji from India. But looking at the time, I would have to request both of them to squeeze their, speech to 5 minutes. So first, I request Farida Khanamji from LIE. She's the national coordinator of LIE, Labor at Informal Economy, Bangladesh. Farida ji has over 18 years of experience working in Bangladesh's informal labor sector, focusing on policy advocacy, training, research, and issue-based program development. As national coordinator at LIE, she works with home-based workers, street vendors, waste pickers, and who are contributing to initiatives that support and strengthen informal workers. She has led one of Bangladesh's flagship social dialogue projects focusing on strengthening owner-worker relationships, reducing workplace inequality, and addressing gender-based violence in informal settings. With like-minded 11 organizations, she contributed to the formation of the Home-Based Workers' Rights Network Bangladesh, which jointly submitted a draft policy for home-based workers to the ministry and relevant government authorities. Farida ji continues to support workers through legal awareness, educational activities, and training for trade union members, reflecting her steady and thoughtful commitment to improving conditions within the informal economy. So I request Farida Appa to take over and enlighten us as to, what kind of solutions on the ground have really worked, which ones have you tried, and you have 5 minutes. Over to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, namaste, and শুভ অপরাহ্ন। ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে এবং যারা আলোচক আছেন, সুধীবৃন্দ আছেন, সবাইকে আন্তরিকভাবে আমি ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি এবং আমি ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি আমাকে এখানে সুযোগ দেওয়ার জন্য, বলবার জন্য। বিষয় হলো যে আসলে 95 থেকে আমি যখন এই মুভমেন্ট গুলো দেখি, ট্রেড ইউনিয়নের যখন যারা আছেন তাদেরকে আমি যখন এডুকেশনাল সাপোর্ট গুলো দিতাম, তখন আমাদেরকে একটা কোর্স করানো হয় রিসার্চ। তো রিসার্চের টপিকস নিতে বলা হয় আমাকে। তখন আমি দেখতাম যে গার্মেন্টস এর মেয়েরা কতটা নির্যাতিত। তো ওই জায়গাটা থেকে আমি গার্মেন্টস সেক্টরটাকে বেছে নিয়েছিলাম। তো ওইভাবে আসলে আমার যাত্রা শুরু। আমি প্রবলেম বলবো না বেশি, কারণ আমাদের এই এশিয়ার চিত্র একই রকম। তো আমরা কিভাবে এসেছি সেটা একটু বলি। এই জায়গাটা থেকে, এবং আমি যে জায়গাটাগুলোতে কাজ করেছি, যেমন বিলসে কাজ করেছি, সেই জায়গাতেও আমরা ট্রেড ইউনিয়নে যারা আছেন, নারীর যারা আসতেন, তারাও কিন্তু ভায়োলেন্সের শিকার হতেন। গার্মেন্টস সেক্টরে আমরা যখন সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগ প্রজেক্ট, ফ্ল্যাগশিপ প্রজেক্ট ইন বাংলাদেশ, আমরা HNM এ শুরু করি, তখন আমরা 5 জনের টিম, আমরা সেই ম্যানুয়ালটা ডেভেলপ করেছিলাম। কারণ গার্মেন্টস সেক্টরে অনেক বেশি নারী নির্যাতন বিষয়গুলো আমরা দেখেছি। সেখানে আমরা ট্রেনিং গুলো এরকম দেবার চেষ্টা করেছি যেন তারা এম্পাওয়ার হয়। নট অনলি দ্যাট, ওখানে যে যৌন হয়রানি, ইকোনমিক্যালি তাদেরকে আসলে ভায়োলেন্সের শিকার হতে হতো। হ্যাঁ, ইনইকুয়ালিটি ওখানে অনেক বেশি ছিল। তো এই জায়গাটা থেকে আমরা কাজ করতে করতে এসে যেটা হয়েছে যে 11তে আসলে আমরা হোমনেট সাউথ এশিয়ার অ্যাফিলিয়েশন নেই, এবং আমাদের সঙ্গে হোমনেট ইন্টারন্যাশনালও ছিল। তো এই জায়গাটা থেকে আমরা বাংলাদেশে আসলে 11টা অর্গানাইজেশন এই হোম বেসড ওয়ার্কারদেরকে নিয়ে কাজ করে, তারা আমরা একটা ফর্ম করি নেটওয়ার্ক, যেটা হলো বাংলাদেশ হোম বেস রাইটস নেটওয়ার্ক বাংলাদেশ। এই জায়গা থেকে আমরা সারা বাংলাদেশে কাজ করি। যেমন আমার সঙ্গে আমার সম্মানিত অর্গানাইজেশন যারা আছেন, আমার আসলে সহকর্মী আমি বলবো, আমার সঙ্গে রফিকুল ভাই আছেন, রেবেকা আপা আছেন, বেবি আপা আছেন, এখন যদি নাম বলতে যাই সালাম ভাই আছেন। এই অর্গানাইজেশন গুলো মিলে আমরা একটা পলিসি তৈরি করি হোম বেসড ওয়ার্কারদের জন্য, ড্রাফট পলিসি। সেটা আমরা শুরু করি আসলে 22 থেকে। আমরা 23-এ এসেও আমরা আমাদের বিগত যে সরকার ছিল, আমরা শ্রম মন্ত্রণালয়ে এটা আমরা জমা দিয়েছিলাম ড্রাফট একটা পলিসি হোম বেসড ওয়ার্কারদের জন্য, এবং এই সময় আমরা 24শে ডিসেম্বরও আমরা জমা দিয়েছি এটা। তবে আমাদের যে সচিব মহোদয় খুব সুন্দরভাবে এটা আসলে গ্রহণ করেছেন। তবে এটার প্রক্রিয়াগুলো এখন যাবে আমাদের, আমরা কিভাবে এটা ফলো আপ করতে পারি। আমাদের সঙ্গে আছেন সম্মানিত শিরিন আপা। ওই মহিলাদের জন্য যে নারী সংস্কার যে বিষয়গুলো ছিল, ওই জায়গাটাই আমি সাবমিট করেছি। শিরিন আপার সঙ্গে পরে আরো কথা বলবো। আসলে এই ইন্সপিরেশন গুলো আমরা পেয়েছি। আমার নিজের কিছু বিষয় ছিল, আমার আশেপাশে যারা আছেন তাদের কাছ থেকে আসলে আমি অনেকটা শিখেছি, দেখেছি কিভাবে যাব। আর বিষয় হলো হোমনেট সাউথ এশিয়া আমাদের সঙ্গে ছিল, হোমনেট ইন্টারন্যাশনাল আমাদের সঙ্গে ছিল, চমৎকার একটা গাইডলাইন আমাদেরকে তৈরি করেছিল। আমি যেটা বলি, পলিসি লেভেলে ভয়েস রেজ করব তখনই যখন আমার কমিউনিটি লেভেল অনেক স্ট্রং হবে, জানা বোঝার জায়গা থেকে। তো আইনি প্রক্রিয়াগুলো যেমন আমাদের প্রথম ছিল হাইকোর্ট ভার্ডিক 2009, সেখানে 332-এ যে মেয়েদের কে অসৎ আচরণ করা যাবে না, অসম্মান করা যাবে না, 2018 ডিজিটাল সিকিউরিটি অ্যাক্ট, এবং আমরা দেখেছি শিশু ও নারী নির্যাতন দমন আইন 2010-এর যে অ্যামেন্ডমেন্ট গুলো, সেগুলোকে আমরা এক জায়গায় করে আমাদের ন্যাশনাল যে ইনস্ট্রুমেন্ট গুলো আছে সেগুলোকে দিয়ে আমরা আসলে ম্যানুয়াল গুলো তৈরি করি। আমাদেরকে গাইডলাইন দেয় হানসা ভাও কমিটি গঠন করবার একটা চমৎকার প্রক্রিয়া এবং গাইডলাইন কারিকুলাম আমাদেরকে দিয়েছিল। সেই জায়গাটা থেকেও আমরা আসলে শুধু আমরা বলবো না, সাউথ এশিয়াও এটা কাজ করেছে, নেপাল কাজ করেছে, ইন্ডিয়া কাজ করেছে, পাকিস্তান, বাংলাদেশ। এই জায়গাটা থেকে আমরা আসলে একেবারে রুট লেভেলের যারা আছেন তাদের এই আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিংটা যদি আমরা স্ট্রং করতে না পারি যে কেন ভয়েস রেজ করবা না। এখন যেটা দেখেছে আমাদের সঙ্গে ফারজানা আছে, ইয়াসমিন আছে, তো এটাতে দেখেছে ওর কমিউনিটিতে ওরা ভালো ভয়েস রেজ করছে। কমিউনিটি থেকে আসলে আমাদের আসতে হবে, আমাদের ঘর থেকে আমরা আসলে নির্যাতিত হই, কমিউনিটির যারা আদার্স আছে তারাও আমাদেরকে নির্যাতন করে। সেই জায়গাটা থেকে আমরা ভয়েস রেজ করবার যে প্রয়াস, যে প্রত্যাশা, যে স্ট্রংনেস, শক্তিটা আমরা এটা তৈরি করছি আস্তে আস্তে। আমাদের সঙ্গে লিডাররা আছে। তো আমরা সারা বাংলাদেশেই কাজ করছি। প্রায় 3000 হোম বেসড ওয়ার্কার এই ট্রেনিং এর আওতায় এসে শুধু জেন্ডার বেস ভায়োলেন্স না, সংগঠিতকরণ নিয়েও কাজ করছি আমরা, এবং অ্যাডভান্স অ্যাডভোকেসি যে প্রসিডিউর, আসলে আমাদের কমিউনিটিতে যারা আছেন তারা মনে করেন আমরা পলিসি লেভেলে কিভাবে কথা বলবো, আমরা তো শিক্ষিত না। তো আমরা যেটা বলি যে তোমাদের যেটা রাইটস, তোমাদের যেটা প্রয়োজন, সেই জায়গাটা থেকে আসলে আমরা এগিয়ে যাব। তো এই জায়গাটা থেকে আমাদের আসলে যেই শ্রম কমিশনের যেই ইয়েগুলো তৈরি হয়েছে আমাদের, আমরা এদেরও সাহায্য পাবো, সহযোগিতা পাবো। এবং আমরা খুবই লাকি যে 3টা কনভেনশন আমাদের রেটিফাই হয়েছে, থ্যাঙ্কস টু শিরিনাপ অলসো। অ্যান্ড আমাদের যেই শ্রম লেবার ডিপার্টমেন্ট আছে সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি, গভর্নমেন্টকে ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি, অ্যাজ ওয়েল এজ যারা স্টেক হোল্ডার কাজ করেছে। আমি আরেকটু যেটা বলতে চাই যে অ্যাওয়ারনেসটা খুব বেশি জরুরি, দরকার। হ্যাঁ, বেশি জরুরি যে আমি আসলে আমার জায়গা থেকে কথা বলবো। এখন যেমন আমরা ইউটিউবে দেখি, ডিজিটাল সিকিউরিটি অ্যাক্টের জায়গাগুলো থেকে যদি দেখি, সোশ্যাল মিডিয়া যদি দেখি, আসলে কনস্ট্রাকটিভ ওয়েতে আমার কথাগুলো বলতে হবে, যেন আমি ওই জায়গাটায় আসলে যেতে পারি, এবং যুক্তিগুলো আমাকে দিতে হবে, আমার রাইটসটা আমাকে এনশিওর করতে হবে। আমি ছোট্ট একটা কথা একটু বলি। আহ, শুধু বাংলাদেশ না, আহ, যত পুরুষ ভাইরা আছেন, মেয়েরা যদি ঘরে আপনাদের শান্তিতে না রাখে, আপনাদের ইকোনমি কোনোভাবে স্ট্রং হবে না, আমি বলবো। মেয়েরা আসলে আপনাদেরকে এই জায়গাটা থেকে অনেক বেশি সহযোগিতা করে। তো এই জায়গা থেকে ভাইদেরও দায়িত্ব আছে, আমরা বলবো আমাদের ভাইরাও আমাদেরকে সহযোগিতা করে। তবে এই যে ছোট ছোট বিষয়গুলো আছে, আমাদের অ্যাওয়ারনেস অনেক প্রয়োজন, আমাদের গভর্নমেন্ট, আদার যে স্টেক হোল্ডার আছে তাদের সহযোগিতা দরকার, আমাদের প্রচারণা অনেক বেশি প্রয়োজন। তো আমরা সাবমিট করেছি যে পলিসিটা, এটা নিয়ে আমরা আরেকটু ফলো আপ মনিটরিং এ যাব। আপা আছেন আমাদের সঙ্গে, আমাদের সাউথ এশিয়া টিম আছে আমাদের সঙ্গে, আমাদের ন্যাশনাল অর্গানাইজেশন আছে। তো আমরা মনে করি স্ট্রং, রাইট? তো আমরা এই জায়গাটা থেকে কাজ করতে পারবো। তবে আমাদের এটাতে যেটা হবে, আরো বেশি আমাদের মনিটরিং দরকার, এবং এই জায়গাটা থেকে পলিসি লেভেলে কথা বলা দরকার, এবং কেমন হতে পারে আসলে আমাদের এই জেন্ডার বেস ভায়োলেন্স নিরসন করবার ক্ষেত্রে। কারণ মেয়েরা কিন্তু অর্থনীতির চাকাটা, পরিবারে বলেন, দেশে বলেন, বিজনেসে বলেন, অনেক বেশি কন্ট্রিবিউশন আছে আমাদের। তো এই জায়গাটা থেকে আমাদের আরো চলতে হবে, তবে সবার সহযোগিতা চাইবো। খুব কনক্রিট কিছু ডিসিশন এবং ইনিশিয়েটিভস আমাদের নিতে হবে, যেন আমরা এই জায়গাটা থেকে উত্তরও ভালো হতে পারে, এবং এটা যেন আমাদের অন্য দেশের জন্য, অন্য জায়গার জন্য যেন আমাদের একটা এক্সাম্পল হতে পারে যে আমরা এটা করতে করতে পেরেছি। যেমন লায়লা আপা বলছিলেন, আমরা খুব ইন্সপায়ার হই আসলে, যে আমরা শক্তি পাই যে এই জায়গাটা থেকে। তবে আমি থ্যাঙ্কস বলবো আমার বাংলাদেশের যারা হোমনেট সাউথ এশিয়ার অ্যাফিলিয়েট যে অর্গানাইজেশন গুলো, ওনারা আমাকে হেল্প না করলে আমি আসলে এই জায়গাটায় আসতে পারতাম না। বেসিক্যালি রেবিকা আপা, রফিকুল ভাই, সালাম ভাই, সবাই হেল্প করেছে। তো ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে যে এই সুযোগটা আমাকে দেওয়ার জন্য। আবারও ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি হোমনে সাউথ এশিয়াকে, এই এই হানসাকে, যে চমৎকার আলোচনার যে একটা প্ল্যাটফর্ম আমাদেরকে তৈরি করে দিয়েছে। ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you so much, Farida Appa, for putting everything in the allotted time. Thank you so much for your insights. And now I request Mary G. Ms. Vyakula Mary is a professional with master's degree in computer science, psychology, and human resource management, and pursuing a doctoral research in gender equity of women migrant workers at textile industries. With over 20 years of experience in the children, women, and laborer development sector in Tirupur and Tamil Nadu, she has been involved in rescuing and rehabilitating thousands of young children and women from a bondage situation. Mary G is a founding member of Anukadam, Unorganized Women Workers Union, demonstrating her dedication to supporting the rights and well-being of laborers. Her key competencies include a deep understanding of industrial relations, making her well-versed in navigating the complex dynamics between employers and employees. As a gender expert, she brings invaluable insights into the challenges faced by women in the workforce. Her expertise in conflict management allows her to effectively address and resolve conflicts that arise in various organizational settings, including textile and garment business houses of international clothing brands and manufacturing units. So over to you, Mary G. Share with us some of the solutions that works on the ground. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. When 5 minutes over, please give me the signal to me. Good evening, all of you. Today, as we gathered to discuss violence against home-based women workers, we are reminded that solution to this crisis must begin where the problem first appears. In our homes, our families, and our communities. Policies in laws are essential. But the real change happens when families transform their attitudes, relationship, and everyday behaviors. At the community level, we have been working closely with vulnerable women and their families, not only with the women themselves, but also with the men and elders who share their household spaces. We recognize that violence is not an individual issue. It is a family issue, a community issue, and a social issue. Therefore, our approach is designed to bring everyone on board: the father, the husband, the brother, the son, the daughter, and even in the in-laws. Each person plays a role in shaping a safe and dignified environment for women. Our work reveals a powerful truth. When a family understands, listens to, and supports one another, and advocates for women's rights, the entire community becomes safer and more resilient. That's why our interventions focus on strengthening family unity as a foundation for preventing violence. We achieve this through dialogue circles, behavior change sessions, emotional support groups, and structured family engagement sessions. These are practical, workable solutions that families can implement immediately. Solutions that reduce stress, increase respect, and build shared responsibility for well-being of women. One of the most effective strategies has been bringing men and boys into the conversation. When we change fathers and sons, we see remarkable transformations. Many of them have never been invited to speak about gender, equality, or nonviolence, but once they are included, they become allies, not obstacles. They begin to recognize that supporting women strengthens the whole household. They realize that a woman who is safe, respected, and empowered creates a healthier future for the entire family. We also work with the mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws who often carry the emotional weight of family tensions. By creating open communications within these relationships, we replace fear with trust and competition with cooperations. These shifts, though small, ripple outward. They influence neighbors, local leaders, and other families. This is how community model becomes replicable. This is how a single family's change inspires 10 more. Our approach is directly connected to the broader goal of preventing violence across South Asia, particularly in Tirupur. If we want lasting change, we must value lived experiences of home-based women workers. They face poverty, isolation, lack of recognition, and limited mobility. Without family and community support, legal protection alone cannot safeguard them. But when communities stand behind them, when families reject violence, when men take responsibility, when elders show compassion, then laws and policies can succeed. Today, our call to action is simple. Let us bridge the gap between policy and people, between the home and the state, between the rights and the everyday realities. Let us create environments where women feel safe to speak, safe to work, and safe to dream. Finding workable solutions requires us to think not only as advocates, but as mothers, fathers, neighbors, and community members. Together, by strengthening families and building supportive community networks, we can create a model that is not only effective, but also sustainable. A model that can be replicated across regions, countries, and cultures. Let us commit, all of us today, to making our communities places where violence has no space and where every home becomes a place of dignity and respect. Thank you, one and all, for gathered here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mary Ji, for providing us this valid, insights and workable models. Now, I have the privilege of introducing our eminent speaker, Honorable Ms. Shireen Parveen Haq. Let me spotlight for her. Yes. Ms. Shireen Parveen Haq is a women's rights activist working on gender, human rights, and development. She's a founder member of Naripoko, where she has worked as a volunteer since its founding in 1983. Currently, Ms. Shireen is the honorary coordinator of Naripoko's program Standing with Rohingya Women and is member of Naripoko's working groups on women's sexual and reproductive health and rights, the Forgotten Women of 71 and War Children 71. Ms. Haq is also a founder member of the Committee for the Protection of Fundamental Rights, which is a platform of human rights defenders in Bangladesh, which has focused on issues related to freedom of expression, freedom of association, and enforced disappearances. Ms. Shireen has been involved with the founding of Feminists Across Generations, an intergenerational alliance to combat gender-based violence. Ms. Haq sits on the advisory board of several national and international organizations dedicated to gender equality, education, and the realization of rights. In November 2024, Ms. Shireen was appointed by the interim government of Bangladesh as head of the Women's Affairs Reform Commission. In December 2024, she was accorded with the highest civilian award for contributions to the advancement of women. In July 2023, she was co-opted to the Board of Trustees of Gono Shasthaya Kendra as a member. And in April 2025, she was made the chairperson of the Board of Trustees. So first of all, I join all the other speakers in congratulating you and the government of Bangladesh in ratifying ILO Convention 190. We all know it is the result of champions like you who have relentlessly fought for this for years. So my simple question to you would be, what can other countries do to follow your steps? So over to you.
Thank you, Srishti, and thank you, Chandni, for having me on this webinar. My own direct engagement with the labor movement or with workers' rights movement is not that significant, but in the Women's Affairs Reform Commission, which you mentioned, we had Kalpana Akhtar, who's a very strong advocate and trade unionist, And she has taught me a lot about what needs to be done. And so one of the main recommendations in our report, in the Women's Affairs Reform Commission report, was the ratification of 155, 187 and 190. And finally, on 22nd October, which is very recently actually, the government of Bangladesh signed the ratification instruments for these three conventions, which were then within less than a month brought into alignment with domestic law. So this is very significant in that legally we are now very much in compliance with international standards. And Bangladesh actually is ratified now all 10 of ILO's fundamental of conventions, becoming the first country in Asia to do so, and the first in South Asia to ratify C190. So this is a matter of pride, but also a matter of great challenge, because we have been, we are quick to sign on to international instruments, but when it comes to the implementation challenges, we are not putting enough resources or efforts or bringing about the kind of policy and institutional changes required to enforce these conventions. So this remains a major challenge. But what does the ratification mean? What message does it convey? I think that is also very important. For number one, it conveys that ensuring safer and healthier working conditions across all kinds of workplaces, whether formal or informal, whether domestic or public, that is important. So a system for occupational safety and health has been upheld to apply to all sectors. Secondly, preventing workplace accidents and hazards and diseases through systemic regulation, preventive measures, monitoring, etc. That is also another message, that this is equally important. Thirdly, to guarantee a workplace which is free from violence or harassment or discrimination, including gender-based harassment, irrespective of employment status, again, irrespective of formal or informal. Aligning Bangladesh's labor laws with international labor standards, enhancing workers' rights, dignity, and protection, which also helps to improve the country's image internationally, especially in export-oriented sectors and global supply chains. The ratification and domestic legal reforms signal to employers, workers, trade unions, investors, and global buyers that Bangladesh is committed, at least on paper, to decent work, safety, and inclusion. However, as I said, it does not guarantee that the implementation challenges are being equally tackled. And for that, what is necessary are more systematic inspections. That means putting in more resources into the number of inspectors, strengthening the department, which is the DIFE, strengthening DIFE, and basically ensuring that there are also accountability mechanisms, that there's some kind of mechanism by which the government will become accountable, even though there is the tripartite system of employers, workers, and government, that ultimately thirdly, to building awareness among employers and workers about rights and obligations under the new law. Fourthly, to ensure resources and institutional capacity to enforce occupational safety and health standards, handle complaints, monitor harassment, and provide training and support. And finally, this is the most challenging one, overcoming cultural, social, and economic barriers that may limit uptake, especially of sectors with historically poor safety or weak labor rights. Why does this matter? For workers, it's a major shift in labor protection. For women workers, especially important, C190 brings protections against gender-based harassment and violence. and allows for complaint mechanisms to be put in place. For industries which are export-oriented, adherence to international labor standards is very important. And finally, for the general labor sector reform, ratification sets a foundation for ongoing improvements, stronger labor laws, better enforcement, and alignment with global decent work ideals. Now, how did this come about? How did it happen? It didn't happen suddenly that we have a government which is more committed to labor standards and the dignity of labor, etc. But it is actually through the struggle, years and years, I would say even decades of struggle by the trade union movements to bring about this kind of change. And I think what happened was there was a kind of convergence of the right historical opportunity and the background of years of struggle by trade union organizations and the trade union movement as a whole to bring about this ratification. And on C-190, I will say that it has been specially strengthened by the adoption by sections of the women's movement to take it up as a key agenda of their struggle as well. So that brought about a kind of convergence between the trade union movements, the workers' struggles, and the women's movement. And I think that is what strengthened the possibility that this might happen. And as I said, this interim government has provided a historic opportunity for many kinds of reforms, of which this has been a very significant one. And we hope that the implementation challenges will be met with equal commitment and resources and capacity building. Thank you, Srishti.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Shireen Haq, and congratulations once again. Now I request Ms. Bandana Rana. She is the member of UN CEDAW committee, and allow me to spotlight you, and then I'll, yes. So Ms. Bandana Rana from Nepal is a member of the UN CEDAW committee since 2017. She was the vice chair of the committee from 2018 to 2020 and has led the working group on women, peace and security and the inquiries. Her experience spans 3 decades of active engagement in promoting women's rights and gender equality through the different organizations and networks she has founded and led. She has worked from the grassroots to the national, regional and global level, leading advocacy, research and public outreach and community mobilization programs. 3 decades of dedicated work has been in violence against women, gendered conflict transformation, peace building, and engendered media. She is the former chair of the National Women's Commission of Nepal. Ms. Rana was a member of UN Secretary General's high-level advisory group for the global study on the implementation of UNSCR 1325, member of the UN Women Global Civil Society Advisory Group, and member of UNFPA High-Level Commission on ICPD 25 follow-up. Ms. Rana is the recipient of the Women of Distinction Award 2016, conferred by the NGO UN CSW Committee, New York, for her dedicated work and contribution to gender equality globally. She is the chair of the board of directors of the Global Network of Women Peace Builders and former chair and co-founder of the Global Network of Women Shelters. In her earlier avatar, she was also the chair of Sati in Nepal, which is an affiliate of HNSA, and is therefore, she is aware of home-based workers and our network in South Asia. Bandana ji, we would be grateful if you could enlighten us on how home-based workers can effectively use CEDAW as a powerful tool to protect themselves and other women in their communities. Most importantly, what concrete steps must we as practitioners, policymakers, and community leaders take to ensure genuine safety and dignity and justice for women home-based workers? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Srishti ji, and for inviting me to speak at this important webinar, Bridging Voices, Home-Based Women Workers, Realities and Policy Pathways to End Violence. I would like to acknowledge the respected speakers, as well as our very own Chandni ji, who continues to guide the women's movement throughout the region, and particularly the home-based workers who courageously shared their stories today. I think this program is fitting that we gather during the 16 days of activism when the world turns its attention to the everyday violence women face, including the hidden forms that home-based workers endure behind closed doors, in informal markets, and within unequal power structures. Since your question is focused on CEDAW, I would like to start off by, I know most of you know what CEDAW is, but in spite of that, I would like to give a very brief highlight in simple words about what CEDAW is, which the full form is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and is often described as the International Bill of Rights for Women. It is a legally binding treaty that almost every country in the world and all countries from South Asia have ratified. And this means that states must eliminate discrimination in law and in practice. They must take proactive measures to achieve substantive equality. They must address both public and private spheres, including the home, the workplace, and the market. And they must report regularly to the CEDAW committee, where we assess their progress and hold them accountable. The CEDAW becomes a very powerful accountability mechanism. It does not wait for equality to happen naturally. It requires transformation of structures, institutions, attitudes, and norms, including those that keep home-based women workers invisible, unprotected, and undervalued, as we have heard from the home-based workers today. So why does CEDAW matter to home-based workers? For South Asia, which is home to the world's largest concentration of informal workers, CEDAW is not an abstract instrument. It is a tool for transformation. Although CEDAW does not mention home-based workers by name, it protects their rights articles and general recommendations. Let me highlight the most directly linked articles to the rights and safety of home-based workers within CEDAW. CEDAW has 16 substantive articles. So Article 1 and 2 is about ending discrimination in all spheres. And in South Asia, many home-based workers are excluded from labor laws, as we also heard from a commissioner from Pakistan, because their workplace is their home. And Article 2 of CEDAW obligates governments to extend legal protection to all workers, including home workers, piece rate workers, and informal workers. It also requires measures to prevent and respond to violence that occurs in the home by family members, contractors, or community actors. And Article 5 of CEDAW is an important article that addresses dismantling harmful gender stereotypes and also violence against women. This is crucial in our region. Social norms restrict women's mobility, pressure them into invisible work, or stigmatize women who step into public economic roles. CEDAW requires states to tackle these stereotypes through education, media, training, and community engagement. Our upcoming General Recommendation 41 is on gender stereotypes. It's being currently drafted. It gives strong guidance on this. And Article 11 is another relevant article, which is on equality in employment. And it states, of course, home-based workers, according to this article, must have safe working conditions, protection from harassment and exploitation, fair remuneration, access to social protection and maternity benefits, and the right to organize into unions and cooperatives. And this is where South Asian governments, we all know, often fall short. There's another important Article 13, which is on economic and social life. And governments must ensure home-based workers have access to credit, financial services, markets, and skills, especially critical in South Asia's supply chains, as we have already heard. Article 14, we call it rural women. However, this article covers all the women who fall into the category of rural women as well as marginalized women. And we do address the issues of home-based workers, including migrant workers, under this article. As we know, many home-based workers live in rural areas, whether it be embroiderers in Sindh, weavers in Nepal's hills, beadi workers in India, or handicraft workers in Bangladesh. CEDAW obligates special protections for them, including access to transport, technology, training, markets, and violence-free environments. In addition to this, we have General Recommendation 19 and 35, which addresses gender-based violence. And just to let you know that general recommendations are detailed, illustrated guidance to member states to understand the CEDAW articles more and comply to it. For home-based workers, these forms of violence are widespread, but often undocumented. So these general recommendations address that as well. So how can home-based workers use CEDAW as a tool? CEDAW can be a powerful instrument in the hands of home-based workers, cooperatives, and networks. And some practical ways are home-based workers can submit, as you know, CEDAW, every country needs to submit its reports on the progress of CEDAW articles every 4 years. And the CEDAW committee reviews and examines this and calls the government for a dialogue. So the home-based workers during these dialogues or preceding this dialogue can submit shadow reports directly to the CEDAW committee, highlight cases of exploitation, wage theft, harassment, and invisibility. And also they can attend CEDAW sessions in person or virtually to brief the committee. When the committee receives clear evidence of the concerns of home-based workers, whether it be on wage, unsafe conditions, or harassment in supply chains, we raise these issues directly with the governments during the constructive dialogue. And after the conclusion of the country's review by the committee, we issue a set of recommendations known as the concluding observations. And home-based group workers can use these, as we call COBs, to lobby ministries, push for budget allocations, demand gender-based violence referral mechanisms for home-based workers, and also hold local officials accountable. The CEDAW language can be used to demand recognition and protection while advocating for home-based workers to be recognized as workers under labor laws, demanding safe working conditions and livelihood protection as rights, not charity, and pushing governments to adopt, again, ILO Convention 177, 190 on homework, which we have been talking about. And I would also like to congratulate Bangladesh for being the first South Asian country to ratify that. I don't think I have much time, so rather than elaborating much, I would like to end by stating this reality that South Asian women have been stitching the fabric of our economies for generations, silently, tirelessly, and skillfully. Yet their work remains undervalued and their safety remains fragile. And CEDAW gives us a framework to rewrite that story, to turn invisibility into recognition, vulnerability into protection, silence into collective power. So during the 16 days of activism, let us commit to ensuring that no home-based woman worker in the region or anywhere else is left behind. Because when we protect home-based workers, we protect the dignity, safety, and economic rights of millions of South Asian women, and that is the path to true equality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rana, for your sharing your knowledge and making it for simplifying CEDAW for us. And before I request Madam Chair for her closing remarks, because I don't think we have much time for question answer. Could I request all of you to turn on your video if possible, so we can take some screenshots so we know who all were here, and that'll be lovely to do. So I request Rekha ji to do the honors. Well, and keep on changing the screens. Yeah, we have 3 screens, I think. Yes, thank you. I think we captured most of them, but keep your videos on for a while so that even when the chair is speaking, we can, take pictures. So I request Madam Chair for closing remarks, and I'm so sorry that we were pressed with time, so I'm not taking any question and answers. But if there are any, please put it in the chat, and we'll make sure that those questions are answered by the respective speakers. So over to you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, I think there were many takeaways today that we can really put it in our bags or in a small thali, whatever you call it, and take it back with us. Well, at times I think it was very emotional too, very emotional. But I feel that today's webinar was not just a discussion. It wasn't just presentation. It was a moment of reckoning. For too long, violence against home-based workers has been dismissed as private, as, in terms of unequal power relation, or as domestic, or even beyond the mandate. But we know the truth. Violence is a labor issue, a rights issue, and a policy failure that must be confronted and head on. So in short, I think we covered many things. Many things. I was trying to take notes, but it was, much, much more than what I could really take. But, I think we were given a lot of to-do list also, the challenges. Okay, of course, I'll join everyone in congratulating Bangladesh. And one thing that Shireen Habji did talk about is convergence. But it's also very important for a country. It's also destiny, I would call it. Right people have to be in the right places. And in the interim government of Bangladesh, if Professor Yunus wasn't there, if people like Shireen Haq were not there, who understand, who have lived those realities, very little could have happened. So I think it is convergence at the right time, at the right level. Well, what I would say is we got a lot of tools. We got a lot of tools in terms of how to lobby, how progressive laws are done, how do you get acts done, and what kind of lobbying is needed at what, which tire. I think that was made sure by Leila ji in her presentation, by Shireen ji, by Bandana ji. I think at their own level, they all shared with us their own experiences, and very, 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 very candidly, Shanti ji and Shagufta, they shared. And Mary ji and Farida also in their own way have made us take cautions, what we should be cautious about and what it can be. But one thing that Shanti ji said that touched me was the cost of violence. We never talk about that. Cost of violence in terms of it doesn't only hurt the women. It's not only the economic right that we are talking about. Her invisibility is much deeper. We heard from Shagufta that she lost a child. And she said, violence, kind of literally decides the fate of children for tomorrow. So I think we should look at violence not as just a beating or sexual harassment. It's much deeper. It's much deeply rooted. I think we should look at it that way. Policymakers and we, the doers and tellers, we should look at that way. That is one. And strategies, I think one of the key strategies that came out very, very strongly is organizing. Lone voices are not heard. It's never recognized. So you have to be together. And though there are many, many challenges, we heard of different levels of threatening, life threatening, being beaten, even being ready to be murdered. Can you imagine if that man didn't knock the door? Shagufta wouldn't have been with us today. So those kind of, small incidences that saved her. So I think we should really take these into consideration. And what I would really say is we have to, we heard a lot about data and we heard about when definitions are not right. It hurts because what came for home-based workers went, in Nepali is Grihini and Griha Shramik, a very small difference. But, from the hands of home-based workers, it went to the homemakers. So even, there's a step between the cup and the lip, as they say. You have to be very careful with that. So, there was a lot of descriptions, examples of tortures and different kind of sexual harassment we talked about. I think, that was very, very clear and very candidly brought about. And when Shagufta ji was talking, I think all of us, we cried in our own way. Our heart, our soul, and our eyes also cried. We couldn't stop ourselves. And some of the things that we can take back is, how to set accountability mechanisms, unless that is there at all levels. Whenever we talk about accountability mechanisms, we think of the government only. It's not only the government. I think accountability mechanisms lies with each and every one of us, with the private sector, with us, too, as Homeless South Asia, as home-based workers, and you all as champions, leaders, it's very much there. And so, all data should be gathered, it should be analyzed, and it should be projected, it should be talked about. If we don't do, it doesn't, data systems are always there, it's shelved, nothing happens. So Homeless Pakistan really told us, how the laws were amended. So there was a lot of things that we could learn from the Pakistan experiences, from Laila ji as well as Sagufta. A lot can be learned from there. And from Bangladesh, of course, Shireen, a very dear friend, and she has been always, wherever, in any position she is, whether she is, in Nari Poko, the leader of Nari Poko, or she's working with Danida, or she's wherever she is. And when her name came as a leader in the system itself, I think I was one of the first ones to call her and congratulate her. And I said, Bangladesh is lucky. The country has to be lucky to get such people at that place. Because we, at the other end, have been activists shouting all our way. But now you are the doer. And Shireen, we are so proud of you. And thank you for being with us today. I think the thank you is Srishti's job. Now, I'm not going to do that, but I have to say that, Having you, Laila, and Vandana together, I said, I was feeling very nostalgic. 3 people I have worked with very closely. And having all 3 of you in that position at global, country level, leading organizations, we are so very proud. It's South Asia being proud. And I'm sure all of us who are here will join me to say we do need leaders. Leaders are not just political leaders making decisions there. We need leaders like you all who can get ratifications done, who can change laws, who can tell us how to use CEDAW. And Bandanaji beautifully, she told us what to pick up. I think, you need to pick up, because I know in Nepal, we all have been struggling, during the shadow report process, that home-based workers' name should be there. But as according to you, I think we can also make a small report and use it. So I think that was very good tools. We got a lot of tools, we got a lot of strategies, a lot of takeaways. And I would suggest HomeNet South Asia picks up some of these. And I have good notes, how monitoring is important. And Mary G's, that charity begins at home. We can't talk just about a transformation, has to be from within. So those are very, very critical things that came. And in these 16 days of activism, all of us have committed to combating against it. So it was wonderful. And congratulations and thank you, Homeless South Asia, for getting all of us together and for coming out to celebrate what Bangladesh has achieved. So all of us, we are celebrating. And maybe at another, date, we could have, whom Shireen was talking about, the lady, who should really join us and who could really educate the others, what steps to be taken. So that could be a kind of a training for all of us. So maybe that is something, we would request. We'll get back to you on that. We'd love to hear that, because government of Nepal has also committed that they are going to ratify 190 soon. So maybe, it'll be a good learning for all of us. So we should have Ms. Akhtar with us, Kalpana Akhtar, right? So we should get Kalpana Akhtar to guide us also. And thank you, Farida, for what you shared. It was beautiful. It was beautiful and it was very powerful. What you have been doing, how you were able to put the strategies together, go and give it to the labor department. So I think there has been lots of not only thoughts but actions along with it. So congratulations and thank you very much. I think it was one of the best webinars I have participated, and having the honor of chairing, having such stalwarts with me, icons with me, and our sisters who literally were not afraid to share what she shared. Sagufta Appa, I'll also call you Sagufta Appa. Thank you so much for sharing what you shared with us. And Shanti Ji, thank you for bringing all those issues. It's not easy to talk. It's not easy. You can talk about others, but when it comes to you, it's very difficult to talk. So thank you very much, and I'll give the mic back to Srishti. And thank you so much. Shireen, Leila has gone. Please extend to her. And Bandana ji, it was a beautiful, beautiful afternoon together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So as we come to the close of this important webinar, I'd like to extend our sincere appreciation to everyone who contributed to making today's discussion meaningful, insightful, and inspiring. On behalf of HomeNet South Asia, I express our deep gratitude to our esteemed speakers, Honorable Ms. Shireen Pervin Haq, Honorable Ms. Umelela Azhar, Ms. Bandana Rana, our chair for the webinar, and our enforcer at HNSA, Ms. Chani Joshi, Ms. Farida Khanam, Ms. Piakula Mary. Your reflections, policy insights, and commitments have enriched our understanding and strengthened our collective resolve to address violence against women home-based workers at both national and regional levels. A very special word of thanks goes to our home-based workers, Ms. Shagufta from Pakistan and Ms. Shanti Maharjan from Nepal. Your courage in sharing lived realities brings this issue to life. Your voices continue to guide our work, our advocacy, and the pathways we seek to strengthen. We are grateful to all partner organizations, colleagues, and affiliates. And I also saw our board of trustee, Ms. Phunsuk Choden, joining from Bhutan. Thank you so much, Phunsukdi, for coming in. So all of you who've joined us today, and to those who continue to champion the rights, safety, and dignity of home-based workers across South Asia. Our appreciation also goes to our interpreters for ensuring seamless communication across Bangla, Hindi, Nepali, and Urdu, allowing every participant to engage fully in this regional dialogue. A special thank you to the HomeNet South Asia team, Richa ji, Sheetal Ben, Rekha ji, Nimish, Bivisha, and Priya for ensuring a smooth and well-organized event. I thank everyone once again for your time, your presence, and your continued commitment. Let us carry forward the insights we shared today and continue building collaborative, evidence-based, and compassionate pathways to end all forms of violence against home-based workers. I thank you, but at the same time, I'm so tempted to show a video which was in line but could not show. So we'll keep it on in case you want to stick around to watch it, because it carries a lot of voices and from the three countries, Bangladesh, India, and Nepal, the home-based workers we work with. So we'll keep that on. And for those who would love to leave the webinar, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your precious time during this 16 days of activism. We really appreciate it. So on that note, I request Richa ji to share the video that we planned to show earlier but couldn't. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bandana ji, for joining. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Across South Asia, over 67 million marginalized women earn their livelihood from working within their homes. Yet, their work often goes unseen, their voices unheard. Many receive unfair wages, face delayed payments, or endure mistreatment from stakeholders. For these home-based workers, economic hardship, physical exhaustion, and emotional stress are a part of everyday life. Home is their workplace, and they are susceptible to facing different forms of violence and harassment within and outside their homes. Despite being in the lowest tier of the economic pyramid, they carry on patiently with resilience, silently contributing to the national economy.
बालबच्चा पाल्नको लागि भए पनि हामी बाध्यताले बिहानदेखि बेलुकासम्म काम गर्नुपर्ने बाध्यता थियो। जियालामा काम गरेको थिएँ र अब जियाला पनि भनेको बेलामा दिँदैन थियो।
কিভাবে নারীকে নির্যাতন করে এগুলো আমি আগে কিছুই বুঝতাম না, কিছু জানতাম না। আমি বিভিন্ন ধরনের প্রশিক্ষণ পেয়ে তারপর আমি এলাকায় আগে ওরকম পাইতাম না, সম্মান পাইতাম না। মানুষরা কিরকম দেখতো, মানে নারীদের তো কোনো সম্মান নেই।
हमें खुद नहीं समझ था कि हिंसा है, जैसे ठेकेदार का तेज बोल देना या हमारे पैसे काम के हिसाब से कम देना या हमें ये कह देना कि जाओ आज काम नहीं है कल देंगे, तो हम सोचते ये तो आम बात है।
Across South Asia, the labor and struggles of millions of women home-based workers go unrecognized by the law, by the state, and by society, which fails to recognize their true value. Enduring violence and humiliation, these women work silently each day, struggling just to survive and provide for their families.
100 रुपए मुझे देने में आनेकानी करती हैं, जबकि बाहर अगर वो सिलवाती हैं तो 300 रुपए पर पीस राजी खुशी दे देती हैं। अगर लाइट चली जाती है तो अंधेरा हो जाता है, इस वजह से मेरी आंखों में दर्द होने लग जाता है, अंधेरे में दिखना कम हो गया, हाथ में दर्द हो जाता है।
Established in 2000, HomeNet South Asia is the only regional network in South Asia dedicated to advocating for the rights of home-based workers, 95% of whom are women. HomeNet South Asia has 62 member-based organizations as affiliates representing 1.2 million home-based workers in Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. In 2022, HNSA launched a transformative project in Bangladesh, India, and Nepal called Catalyzing Collective Action Towards a Violence-Free World of Work for Women Home-Based Workers in South Asia. The initiative aimed to empower women home-based workers, prevent different forms of violence they face, and strengthen their collective voice. It focused on organizing home-based workers, raising awareness about violence in all its forms, educating them about their rights, and advocating for the ratification of ILO Convention C-190. The project was carried out by HNSA affiliates, LIE in Bangladesh, Seva Bharat in India, and Sabha Nepal in Nepal. Initially, its core aim was to empower at least 50 women home-based workers in each country by raising awareness about violence against women and gender discrimination. A regional training of trainers on prevention of violence against women was organized in Kathmandu.
I really want to congratulate HomeNet South Asia for hosting and organizing this unique, I would say, training of trainers. It is on violence against women, on home-based workers. So the topic itself is very unique, and HomeNet South Asia has done several studies in terms of to find out what kind of violence happens to home-based workers. This is after COVID, and then we also try to look at what are the redressal mechanisms in terms of laws. So we looked at laws in the 3 countries, India, Bangladesh, and Nepal. And then we came out with a training material for them, that they can really use. So these are the goodies that HomeNet South Asia had prepared.
Through the training, participants gained a clear understanding of the different forms of violence, how to file complaints, the relevant legal provisions, and the state services available to them.
हिंसा भनेको के हो, हिंसा भयो भने के गर्ने भन्ने विषयमा हामीलाई जानकारी भयो, गृहश्रमिक महिलाको लागि आवाज उठाउने भयो.
Most importantly, they emerged empowered, confident to speak up, demand their rights, and take action for change. A key innovation of this project was the development of a handful of master trainers, selected women received advanced training to lead community-level workshops, enabling them to educate others on violence prevention and workers' rights. Through these participatory and practical training, the master trainers went on to train a total of 571 women home-based workers to understand and address gender-based violence in their communities. Of these, 106 women home-based workers were in Bangladesh, 300 in India, and 165 in Nepal.
জেন্ডার বেস ভায়োলেন্স ট্রেনটা পেয়েছি এসবের মধ্যে যাওয়ার পর খুব উৎসাহিত বাড়ে। এরকম বিভিন্ন ধরনের যদি কখনো কোনো ঝগড়াঝাটি হয় আমাদের এলাকায়, তো আমরা নিজেই সেটা সমাধান করতে চেষ্টা করি। আর এখন ওখানে ট্রেনিং পাওয়ার পর এতটুকু শিখেছি যে অন্যান্য কোনো झगड़ा हो रहा है আমরা মীমাংসা করতে পারি। আমি হবো ফারজানা হবো।
सेवा में मैं जाने के बाद बहुत मेरे अंदर बदलाव आ चुका है, चाहे मेरे साथ हो और कोई बहनों के साथ हो। जैसा बहनें बोलती है ठेकेदार पैसे नहीं दे रहा, भाई काम तो करवा लिया, कैसे नहीं दे रहा, चलो थोड़ा सा अपन बात करेंगे। एक इकट्ठी होकर 10-12 बहनें जाती है तो घबरा के वो ठेकेदार जिसके पैसे है वो दे देता है। सेवा में जाने के बाद मुझे पता चला कि हम भी एक कामगार महिला है, हम भी है ना काम करने वाले हैं, लेडीज है तो कमजोर है नहीं।
These master trainers actively organize workshops, facilitate discussions, advocate for protective measures in their communities, and suggest appropriate redressal mechanisms. The project also prioritized strategy advocacy. Multi-stakeholder meetings were held in all 3 countries, bringing together government officials, trade unions, civil society representatives, media, and HNSA partners.
It's not just the family, it's not just the community, but it's the nation also suffers. So the cost of violence attacks everybody, not just the woman. We take it as a woman's issue. Oh, poor woman, she's beaten. No. When she gets beaten, her productivity goes down. So our GDP also goes down. So we have to link it and think about the cost of violence. And we should all fight too in the point.
In Dhaka, Bangladesh, discussions focused on legal recognition and policy protection for home-based workers. In Patna, India, representatives from 18 states shared experiences, challenges, and best practices to create a unified voice for policy change. In Lalitpur, Nepal, dialogues with local, provincial, and central government officials explored practical steps to include home-based workers under labor law. Across these discussions, a shared commitment emerged to advocate for the ratification and implementation of ILO Conventions C-177 and C-190, ensuring legal recognition, protection, and safe working conditions for home-based workers. The project ignited a powerful shift among women home-based workers, transforming awareness into action.
আমরা যেহেতু মহিলা মানুষ, আমাদের আসলে আইনগত দিকটা আসলে কেউ বলতে চায়, কারণ মহিলারা তো যে আইন বিষয়ে জেনে ফেলে, সেই ক্ষেত্রে আমাদের যে সুযোগ সুবিধা আছে সেই ক্ষেত্রে এই করা যায় না। এটা হলো একটা বিষয়। তো আমরা আসলে এই ট্রেনিংগুলোর মাধ্যমে অনেক কিছু শিখেছি।
Across all regions, participants began to recognize themselves as workers with rights, confidently identifying and challenging violence in their lives and workplaces. They took collective steps to improve conditions, from negotiating fairer work terms to advocating for safe workplaces, social protection, and recognition under C-190. Leaders engaged with local government, set up help desks, and welcomed new members into their groups, building stronger, unified voices that continue to push for lasting change. Over the past 3 years, the project has demonstrated that when women are informed, empowered, and united, change is possible.
हामीले यस तालिम मार्फत उहाँहरूको कामको रियलाइजेसन गराउन सफल भयौँ। उहाँहरूले हिंसा भनेको कुटाई पिटाई मात्र हिंसा हो भन्ने सोच्नुहुन्थ्यो, तर त्यो होइन, हिंसाका धेरै स्वरूपहरू हुन्छन्, प्रकृति रूपहरू हुन्छन् भन्ने कुरा पनि हामीले बुझाउनलाई यो तालिम मार्फत हामीले काम गरेका थियौँ।
खुद को जब उन्होंने पहचानना शुरू किया कि वह भी एक कामगार बहन है, तो अब उनकी थोड़ी सी हिम्मत बढ़ी है। अब वो आत्मविश्वास से ठेकेदारों के पास जाकर बात कर पाती हैं कि हम भी एक कामगार हैं। तो इस तरह से जो है वो एकजुट होकर एक संगठन का महत्व उनको समझ आया कि संगठित होकर वो कैसे अपने काम के लिए आगे बात कर सकती हैं।
A safe, dignified, and violence-free world of work can become a reality when women come together to demand change. These achievements mark the beginning of a broader movement to secure the rights, safety, and dignity of home-based workers across South Asia.
You should stop it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining in and staying back to watch this video. Your solidarity means a lot to Homeness South Asia, and that's the way we go forward. Putting all the energy that we bring in when we meet virtually also, and when we meet physically, of course, inshallah, whenever that is. So thank you so much. Thank you and Khuda Hafiz. Namaskar. Dhanyavad sabailai.